Spell it Berberich, but pronounce Berberich. That's how you know someone.
Hello, and welcome to Jason Cavness Experience. I'm your host, Jason Cavness. Guest today is Dr. Linda Berberich. Linda, thanks for being here today. Really appreciate it.
Sure.
So I'm going to ask you a question I'm pretty confident you're not going to expect me to ask you. So tell me how you make ginger rhubarb bologna, and what in the world is rhubarb? Like, what is rhubarb? I've never known what that is.
You don't know what rhubarb is?
I've heard it all the time, but I have no clue what it is.
So technically, rhubarb is a vegetable that has a pretty deep root, and it is the stem of that vegetable that you eat. Most people think it's a fruit because that's how they're associated with. They eat it in pies, in desserts, in breads, and that kind of thing. But a rhubarb ginger bellini is basically rhubarb and ginger stewed together in a simple syrup. You make this with sugar, obviously. You make that into that simple syrup, and then you add a little prosecco, and there is your bellini, and it's delicious.
It's like a pasta dish, or what is bellini?
It's a beverage.
Oh, it's a beverage. Okay.
Yes.
And how's it? I'm guessing it tastes pretty good since you take all the time to grow all this stuff and make it for yourself.
Everything that I make tastes good.
It's good
because it's grown with love.
Yeah,
You know?
of course.
So yeah.
Of course. And you do this you do this homegrown stuff all the time. It's like a habit of yours, or
Yeah. So I grew up in a very small farming community in British Columbia, probably about 45 miles east of Vancouver, but right on the border, right? So I've been growing my own garden since I was like a little kid, like I want to say 5 or 6 years old. So regardless of where I've lived in the world, if I was in apartments, they were on patios. But where I live now, in the hinterland, I have tons of garden space. So grow
so is
everything.
this like kind of what's the word looking for, like therapeutic for you, or like it helps you calm down or relax or something, or
Gardening is lots of things, right? Like digging in the dirt, yeah, is for sure therapy. But the fact that it's this kind of continuous way that you can create something, and it takes this whole process of having to let it grow. And then from the things that you grow, you can then make food from them, share that food with your friends. So to me, it's this sort of whole cycle love thing. Like you hear about love languages, right? I'm not sure what all of those are, but mine is definitely if I make you something and I feed you, that's me showing that I love you. So
hey,
yeah.
Linda, cheers.
Oh,
Thanks for being
cheers.
here.
Yes, of course. Cheers. Do we do one shot?
No.
Okay, you can sip. Okay, good
Yes,
deal.
yeah.
I need
So
water, Chase.
yeah. So tell me about the tattoo on your shoulder that everyone can see.
Oh,
The
that
other side, yeah.
oh, I was like, which
Yeah.
side? We're doing another hair moment. That is Bambi, and that is actually I got that one in Seattle when I was 16.
Oh, wow.
Lied about my age with my best friend, actually. Me and she. That's how I got to Seattle. Is even though I'm from Canada, my best friend lived in Puyallup, and so I spent a lot of time down here. So when we were 16, we decided to go to Pike Place Tattoo Parlor and get ourselves some tattoos. And Bambi was my nickname when I was a teenager because of my eyes, right?
Okay.
Bambi eyes. So so that's what that was. I was working at McDonald's actually at the time, and we had like those Dynatab name tags. And when you wash them, washes off your name tag. So the L wasn't working on the Dynatab. So the guy I was dating actually worked in the kitchen. And so he decided to be funny and put in Bambi. And that was my name on my name tag and just sort of stuck. And everybody asked me, is that your real name? I think there was like some model or something in the 80s, Bambi Bendleton or whatever that I kind of resemble. I don't know. But it's supposed to be something about my eyes. But yeah, that was my second tattoo,
Okay.
actually.
Nice.
Yeah.
So what are you doing right now for fun, either for fun or for hobbies and stuff?
Oh, the biggest one that I do that takes up most of my time, besides the gardening, of course, um, figure skating. I'm an adult figure skater. I compete. I do theatrical shows, and mostly I did it just to kind of keep in shape, but it's actually pretty fun. It sort of feeds that creative vibe as well.
So you're still ice skating today, like
Yeah.
recently?
Yeah. I've got a competition coming up in 2 weeks, actually.
Wow. So so it's like intramural league ice skating competitions, or it's
It's
like
no, I'm serious. I compete USFS adult
okay.
figure skating. So it's both international and national levels. I got fourth at sectionals last year. Didn't go to sectionals this year because too busy with work.
Mhm.
But yeah, actually last year I won. I was doing Rob Zombie's Dragula.
Oh wow.
That is not normally what you would think of when you think about figure
No,
skating. So
no.
that was one of my theatrical programs. Ended up getting fourth at sectionals with that one, but had won at pretty much every other competition. That came out of doing a Halloween show down at Tacoma Twin Rinks, not this past Halloween, but the Halloween before. And it was just kind of a joke, right? Like they said, well, what's your favorite Halloween song? And I'm like, Dragula. And they're just like, ooh, with your hair, we could totally make you look like Rob Zombie. And then I started getting into it, and it really was like for that Halloween show, it was the standout. Like I was on my picture of me. I could show you pictures of it. I have all kinds of them, but it's super creepy. I crawl out of the graveyard, kind of like that girl from The Ring. You see her crawling. That's me crawling down the ice, and it was just this really crazy, crazy thing. And we just looked at the video a lot and did a lot of the choreography based on the video. And yeah, when by the time I got to sectionals and competed it there, we're like, okay, this is USFS. Is this going to fly here? But it was in Vegas that year. And so, yeah, not only did it fly, had I done harder elements in it, because I just did it for, like I said, for show. So I did really easy jumps, whatever. But the three scores, one of them is based on skating skills. The other two are based on performance and theatrical value. Those other two scores, I actually scored higher than the people who finished ahead of me. Had I done like literally a flip jump instead of a sow cow, or instead of like waltz jumps, if I would have done a combination spin, I would have got first. So doing Rob Zombie, which I just love. And people were walking in going, that is crazy. That was definitely the highlight of sectionals. I can't believe you skated to that. It was so fun.
So I'm guessing your actress theater ability helps you during your performance of ice skating.
That's 100% why I think I got into it. It's kind of my drag. And so that's what Dragula was too, right? Like I'm literally a woman dressed as a man, so I'm in drag. The song is called Dragula, and it was super fun. I mean, and plus what that song's about. Like I did so much of if you actually heard the lyrics and saw what I was doing as the elements, there's so many of like those inside jokes, Easter egg kind of things in there that I did with the choreography. But yeah, that's kind of how I scratch that theater itch now, is by doing theatrical skating.
And so when's your next performance as far as ice skating?
Well, we've got Mayblades coming up down at Sprinker in 2 weeks.
How do people just show up and attend this, or is it's like
Yep.
everyone can come, or?
Yep. So this one is the last qualifying event for National Showcase. So you need to qualify. That means you finish in the top 4 in a qualifying competition before the end of May in order to qualify for National Showcase. National Showcase is exclusively focused on theatrical skating. This year it's in San Jose, so it's actually pretty close. Yeah, so that's what this is for.
And are there videos on YouTube of you ice skating?
On my Fit Mind Body conditioning channel, I publish, that's mostly my fitness stuff. I was a fitness instructor master trainer for years and years and years. So that's mostly there, but I occasionally will throw on, if it's a good performance, if it's one that was captured well on video, because a lot of times the video capture can be kind of hit and miss. Like they record all of your qualifying events, all the USFSA events, there's live streams, StreamYard or Barnyard, I can't remember which one it is, that streams from most of the rinks. But they actually do have footage on it. And at the major competitions, they actually are showcased on TV, right? They actually will stream them on Peacock. So,
You know how most people, when they get like speaking, a lot of people, they get really nervous, really scared.
yeah.
Do you get the same thing before you act or before you do ice skating? You like get kind of nervous. You're just like so confident and so wild. You're just, okay, this is my thing. I'm gonna blow this away.
It really depends, right? Like I actually get more nervous about doing testing and figure skating because that is just you against whatever they decide the standard is. When you show up to compete, you just got to be better than everybody else that you're competing against, right? So there's that. But for me, I've been an athlete my entire life, literally since I was 2 years old, and then started doing theater when I was 5, and have professional training through that. So for me, it's really more of getting the opportunity to show off all that hard work and practice you did. So the only time I get nervous is when I didn't put in the work. But if I put in the work, I'm actually just more pumped to let me show you, especially when it's fun. Like Dragula, every single time I skated that, it's just you get into the character. And I mean, these skating programs are short. They're like 2-3 minutes long max. I mean, the longest one I did actually was for a Wounded Warriors show. I skated to Beautiful War, Vikings of Leon, with an Olympian, so it was super fun. And that particular one, that was 5 minutes, but that was because it was a showpiece. And it's also because I'm skating with a very famous Olympian, right? And so it was really more about him than about me, but that's like on the long end. But usually they're short. They're only like a few minutes long. So, you don't really even have time to get nervous. So
Is there like a place you haven't ice skated at you want to go, like kind of like the mecca of ice skating? I don't know whether it would be like, like a lot of singers, they want to sing in Madison Square Garden, a lot of theater people want to do on Broadway. Like, is there like an ice skating mecca place that ice skaters like, man, if I could like perform here, it'd be like the coolest thing ever?
There's lots of those kinds of rinks, around the world. I've skated at a couple of them. I've had the good fortune of actually, meeting Dorothy Hamill and going to her adult fantasy figure skating clubs, and because of that, she also had these, like, amazing coaches, right? And one of them was JoJo Starbuck. So one of those places that is, like, you gotta skate there if you're a figure skater is at, it's right in Manhattan where the Rockettes skate. There's a rink there, and that rink is, like, one of a kind, but there's 2 in Canada that I haven't skated on since I've actually learned how to figure skate. So I skated as a kid, but I was like a hockey player. Like I was very much a tomboy. Like if you would have told me when I was a little kid that I was going to be a figure skater, I'd be like, yeah, no, that's not me at all. You know, you're thinking of somebody else. But in Canada, there's 2 places for sure. The Rideau Canal in Ontario, which is in Ottawa, right? It's the longest natural skating rink in Canada, maybe even in the world, just because it's so long. There's lots of trails in Canada that are frozen over, so you can literally go hiking, but you're skating. And then the one other one is, near Lake Louise in Alberta, frozen over lake, Lake Marine, beautiful, and tons of, like, Elvis Stoiko and, Elijah Balage, some of the most famous skaters, Canadian skaters, they, have all their TikToks up there where they're outside, but so those outdoor rinks, those are the ones that I really, really want. I'm sure there's tons in Russia and Norway and those kinds of places too that I would love to skate on, but for me, I mean, rinks are rinks pretty much, but those outdoor ones, that's special.
Yeah, so this is I'm thinking way below your level, but here in Partner Square, December, January, they put an ice skating rink outside here
Yeah.
at Oxford Square. That's pretty cool. See all the kids and ice skating, all the adults busting their ass, you know?
Well, they did do that one thing too, where they did the mazes here before COVID, where there was like a tiny little figure skate or skating trail. It was a big light show. It was at the where the Mariners Stadium is. They just did it up with a ice rink and then these lights. So I did that one. And there's always these little community rinks that pop up during the winter season.
Yeah. How about your acting? Still doing acting? Or was that something in the past? You still doing that sort of kinda?
I'm thinking about this. One of my colleagues just moved to Asheville in Oregon, and they have a Shakespeare festival down there. One of my when I was still in theater school, Macbeth, right? I was one of the 3 witches, and I loved that. And I always wanted to play Lady Macbeth, but when I was in theater school, I was young, right? So I couldn't quite pull that off, didn't have the maturity. Now I could totally you could see me as Lady Macbeth. Come on. I could totally pull that off. So
And did you study acting in, like, in high school or something, or is just something that's a passion, you just kept doing it?
I actually got into college on a theater scholarship.
Okay.
So I was involved in acting from a very young age because my brain, I'm a person who memorizes things very quickly and easily. So my mom wanted to maximize that. And also I was kind of a shy kid. So she wanted to kind of bring that out of me by getting into theater. And because I could memorize lines and because, as you can see, I'm kind of a gregarious, outgoing kind of person, emotive person, I really excelled at it. So yeah, I took theater all through high school, and then, competed in theater competitions. I was on a TV show for a couple of seasons. Moved to Victoria to go to school at UVic and was doing theater school there for about 3 years before, um, my theater history professor basically said, "Linda, you're so smart. Why are you wasting your brain getting a BFA? You should be doing science." And I had been studying psychology as my kind of minor because in theater, the big eternal question is, what's my motivation, right? So why are these words coming out of my mouth? So that's how I got into psychology. And once I got into psychology and really was interested in human behavior, and that sort of took it for me. And so as much as I loved doing theater, I really heard Alan Hughes' voice as you've got more to contribute besides the fact that you can memorize lines quickly, But I still like the theater piece is always there. Like there's a new software in the work that I do now that just came out called Godot. And of course there's me, bump bump. Everybody's been waiting for Godot. So and most people are pronouncing it, it's Godot, Godot. I'm like, it's Godot, it's waiting for Godot. How do you not know this? So yeah.
Nice. And I saw on the internet where you belong to Goodreads
Yeah.
and you read like 120 books, is what it
What
says.
was that like in a month? Or
I don't remember. It said you read 120 books. I was gonna ask you, is that in a month, a year?
I was gonna say that's gotta be in like a couple of months. I read
Okay.
all the time. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're pretty good, like, voracious reader, so to speak. Like you like,
Well, you saw that book bag. I
yeah.
got books in there right now. So yeah, every chance I get. I'm currently reading Don Jose Ruiz. I in that book in my bag there, I've got the medicine bag. That's what I was reading on the way here.
And you like read different subjects, or do you read for professional development, for fun, or just like
Yes.
okay, all the above?
Yes.
That's all I was gonna say, yeah. And like Do you read a book like in one setting, or like, suppose I'm making this a book's 500 pages, like, okay, I'm reading 100 pages a day for 5 days. You just like just sit down and knock it out.
I used to do that. Like, I used to be you finish what you started, you got into this, but now I've got this rule that if you haven't caught me in the first 50 pages, I'm out of here,
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I read really fast. I read on a lot of different subjects. And I just, if it's something that's really grabbing me, I mostly read nonfiction, although I have read and biographies. I like biographies a lot, but some fiction is really good and it can grab you and it'll stay with you. So yeah, it's completely dependent on what else I got going on. Like I am one of those people who will spend an entire weekend in a book for sure.
So when you read a book, suppose you finish the book, right? Are you the type of person like you can remember every little minute detail?
Pretty
Or
much.
you remember the themes? Or it's like you can read like you could take a test the same day, like and make an A.
On page 357, on the third paragraph, they talked about blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's great.
I told you I've got that weird brain.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
Do you have any books coming up that you want to read that haven't done yet?
Yeah. Yeah. I've got a couple of lists. One on Indian feminism that I really want to read. Another one that I just got sent to me that looks super interesting on stochastic modeling, which just sounds like that's insane. Why are you reading about math? And then what else? There was another one on some medical technology that I'm looking at as well. And I'm doing a lot of reading around dreams just because I'm working on a dream app. That's one of my clients. So
And you've always been like a big reader
yeah,
since you're a little girl?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I learned how to read when I was like 2 or
You
3.
think that came from your parents or
Yeah,
a friend, or you just picked it up naturally?
I am one of those people who wants to break the code, and that was the first code I broke was the what are the letters, what do those squiggles mean? And that was largely my parents reading to me all the time. And my dad in particular. So we used to read like Berenstain Bears, right? So he'd read those to us, and because my dad being who he is, he always likes to spice it up a little bit, right? Put in some details. So I was always out of myself and my brothers. I was the only one who could tell when my dad was adding stuff in, and so I'd always call him out on that. And he told me that too. He goes, "You're going to be very good at reading through between the lines when you're older." He goes, "There's not going to be anyone who's going to be able to BS you because you'll be able to tell that they're totally just making stuff up." And so, yeah, so my dad read to me all the time as a kid, and then I started reading to him. And when I started reading back to him, he's all like, "How are you reading this?" And I go, "I think I got it memorized." Like I didn't know the words,
Mhm.
but basically I'd memorized it
And
after
how old were you when you started reading to your dad?
2 or 3.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I started doing gymnastics when I was 2 as
Mhm.
well, and I think that there's a really strong correlation between well, I know there is, I'm a psychologist, between, when you're a young child and you're developing your muscle memories and your motor skills, there's a peak time in there that you can also link into your cognitive skills. And so the first code I broke was the reading code, and my dad's German, so I was reading in German and English. Because I'm from Canada, I had to learn French too, and we did that immersion. So by the time I was 6, I had 3 languages. And then math came shortly thereafter because I was super curious. And my dad, again, from Germany, how he learned was more of an Iranian method of mathematics, so using an abacus and different from what we were learning in Canada and how math is taught in the United States. But I had very advanced math skills even before I started school. So
And I'm guessing both your parents are kinda highly educated?
no, both my parents are immigrants,
Okay.
and we're actually pretty not too far removed from one of the last tribes in Germany. So
Okay.
yeah, so strong indigenous background actually.
Okay. So next, I saw where you were just, awarded something called the, 50 Over 50 Women in Tech recently.
Yeah,
Talk
yeah.
about that.
I thought that was pretty funny. So you hear about a lot of these 20 under 20 and 30 under 30 lists, right? So a woman I know who I have a great deal of respect for, Cindy Gallup, actually, she is the brain behind Make Love Not Porn. And she was being very vocal about how we celebrate youth and we don't celebrate folks who are actually making waves in their second half of their lives, right? And so she made an effort of looking at women in tech who are over the age of 50. And I know I've gotten my entire life that no one knows how old I am. So I figured, well, why not just be out there with it? I'm 55, right? I'm going to be 56 in about 3 weeks here. And yeah, so I was talking to somebody and lo and behold, my name showed up in that list and I was super pumped. I mean, it's quite an honor.
And so what did someone had to nominate you, or like how the process, or just someone just saw you gonna be in this list and you're like, "Oh, wow, thank
I
you."
think I got nominated for it.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I was looking through it out of curiosity. I only found out about it because Cindy had posted it on LinkedIn, and I was curious about who made the list, and then my name's there. I'm like, oh, okay. So I thought that was pretty cool.
So here's a question for you. So like back when I was in my 20s, I was like, man, like 50s, that's old as fuck, right? Like, man, I'm be decrepit old, man, I gotta do my life. But now I'm like, I tell people I have more focus, more energy than I did back then, right? Do you feel the same way? Like you have all this focus and drive, you just want to get shit done.
I am still waiting to be a grown up, honestly. Like I keep wondering when that's going to happen. I haven't really noticed much of a difference I mean, I've had gray hair, I have wrinkles, maybe a little bit slower than I used to be, but I don't know. I think that we just have these assumptions because we don't know, right? And if you can't predict what your own life is going to be like based on somebody else's life, both of my parents, they're both gone now, but both of them were very youthful in appearance, but both of them were also very much into play. Like they both had their play things that they like to do, their play activities. And I think that that kept them young and kept them vibrant. And I'm kind of the same way, like people are like, you figure skate, you do all that. Like, you're not a child. Why you do that? I'm like,
Yeah.
it's harder. What are you talking about? It's way harder when you learn as an adult. Get out, like,
That's always been one of my pet peeves recently. Like when people will say, like, you see, like, there's a video somewhere with this guy in his like 60s, 70s, like learning how to skateboard. People are like, what are you doing? Like, you're too old to skateboard, like that's some bullshit, right? Like,
yeah,
and like he's in the 60s, 70s, let him do what he wants, right?
yeah.
Of course, people say, well, you're gonna fall and break your bones, whatever. Well, that's he knows that, he knows the risk.
Well, and the thing is people are going to say things based on their own perceptions. And when people say things like, you can't do that to me,
Mhm.
I'm like, yeah, you're right. You can't.
Yeah,
You can't. you know, they should catch the thing that, like, I'm not you, man.
exactly.
Like I've known for a long time that I'm very different from other human beings in a lot of different ways. And so I don't really subscribe to a lot of that. Oh, you're a girl, so you can't do that. Oh, you're this age, so you can't do that. And it's like, you don't know me. Like that's sort of my take.
So what's something that you haven't done yet you want to do? Like maybe not on your bucket list, but like maybe like I don't know, like travel somewhere, skydive, sing somewhere, like something like like some a skill you want to learn.
There's something that immediately popped to my mind, and there's this really twisty bridge in Norway. I want to ride a motorcycle on it.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
so that's
Okay.
something I definitely want to
Okay.
do. Like that's just the immediate first thing that popped into my mind. I used to ride motorbikes. My brothers had motorbikes, and so I steal their motorbikes and go riding around and stuff. So that was one of the things that I've always wanted to do is like when I don't know, living in Washington, having a motorcycle because it's so rainy here,
Yeah.
If I move somewhere warm, definitely getting a motorcycle for sure. I'm skating a program to Honeybee, Head and Hearts Honeybees. So I've got a honeybee kind of costume. I literally saw this honeybee. I don't know if it's a Harley or an Indian, but beautiful bike, beautiful bike. I'm all like, dude, I'm so getting that one day. And right then, I'm gonna bring it to Norway, and we're riding on that crazy twisted bridge. So that's one thing that immediately came to mind.
So from your point of view, what does it mean to be a lifelong learner?
I think that means staying curious, being open, being receptive, recognizing that you can learn from anyone and anything and any kind of situation if you take that mindset to it. So instead of thinking like people are like, you failed, you did this wrong. It's like, no, it's an opportunity to learn. That's kind of my deal on it.
And then why do you think so many people stop learning, right? Like so many people they're like, oh, I finished school, I'm not learning no more. But why do you think people just like stop learning? Like,
I think it goes back to like the opposite, right? It's they close themselves off. They it's self-limiting. Or they get beaten down by other people. Like they believe somebody else's hype about them.
yeah,
Like one of the things that I always say when people say things that are like a limiting belief to me, it's like I'll say to them, like, who told you that? And why did you believe them? Because that's the thing, right? It's usually some person in a position of authority tells you something, maybe has punished you for thinking differently about it. For me, and it's just like that's such a shame to me. It's like why limit yourself like that? Like why think that that's the only way of being or the only way of thinking or the only way of knowing? Like I get shit all the time because, scientist, 2 master's degree, PhD, and then what, you're studying astrology, you're studying like palmistry, like what are you doing with that dream analysis? Like what are you doing? Like don't you think that's going to blow your credibility? As far as I'm concerned, it's like people will scapegoat those other ways of knowing without even knowing about it, right? So it's just like saying, oh, physics, what a bunch of bullshit. Gravity, please. You'd sound like an idiot, right? Because science is accepted as the way of knowing. What like, why would you disparage something that you know, like, nothing about? Like, when you talk about astrology, most people are maybe coming up with their sun sign. If that's all you know, then yeah, of course you're gonna disparage it. Like, you would never even understand calculus if all you know was 2 plus 2 is 4, right? Then you think, "Calculus, please," what a bunch of hogwash that is. So, I kinda liken it the same way. It's like, know what you know, and if you don't know much about it, be curious about it instead of just dismissive.
Can anyone, regardless of age or regardless of their smartness level, IQ level, learn anything? Example, can a 3-year-old kid learn calculus? Can a 75-year-old guy with like maybe onset of dementia learn, computer programming, right? Or is there limits to how you can learn on all that kind of stuff?
I think the limit to how you can learn is more by the teacher than by the learner. It's a matter of, have you met the learner where they are and in the modality that's going to work for them. So would you teach a 3-year-old calculus the same way that you would teach 14-year-old or an 18-year-old? Probably not, because it's going to land differently with them. But then also considering not just the age or that level of demographic, but the individual sitting in front of you, right? Like, what is the thing that inspires them? What is the thing that it can connect that piece that you're trying to teach them with what they already know? Like, that's the way that I look at it. So I'm not about all the isms and, it's like, "Oh, this is all you're capable of because you're a white dude and you can only think this." Like, how stupid is that, right? No, no, give people an opportunity to show you what they're capable of.
So obviously this isn't a real character, but do you ever watch The Big Bang Theory and
Yeah,
Young Sheldon? So young Sheldon, like he's a little kid, 4 or 5 years old, like brilliant person, right? Like,
yeah.
do you think we do a good enough job as a society, especially America, like like finding these individuals like super genius, smart, like putting them in positions to excel instead of like just keeping them in like young Sheldon, keeping this like hick Texas high school or college or whatever elementary school, like he was smarter than the teachers, right?
Yeah.
Do you think we do a good enough job with that?
I don't think I don't think we do a good job really of doing service to almost most of the people that go through education in the United States. So, yeah, the folks who are on the outliers, like the Sheldon Coopers, the gifted kids, they're going to learn in spite of what you're doing. But then I think about all the kids that are left behind just because you didn't reach them. Like, I think there's a lot of wasted human potential here in the United States, for sure.
I mean, obviously, it's a made up character, but you had Sheldon Cooper, super genius, and
Yeah.
then next door neighbor was Billy, who was like not the brightest kid around, right? He's just like, "What?" And
Yeah.
like in the show, the teacher was failing both of them, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's like happens in society all the time,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah, it's because schools are set up mostly for the benefit of the teachers and what's convenient for them to teach a group of students and teach to the magical middle. Well, no one is that magical middle, right? Like, this is my beef with statistics. I taught statistics in grad school, and and I will tell you, it's like no one represents the mean. And this whole notion that we all fall very neatly on a bell curve is just a hypothesis, right? I think that, we have the opportunity, especially with where technology is now, to really personalize and individualize instruction for everybody who wants to learn anything. But we don't. We don't do it. Like, we don't value it because basically the point of education, as I see it in this country, is to produce a nation of workers as opposed to a nation of artists and critical thinkers and innovators. And so it's only by luck and happenstance and oftentimes how much money your parents make and where you live and that demographic that will determine how much you actually get access to, which is unfortunate, because I think, like I said, think about all the wasted potential.
Here's one for you. So I think in most states, and I could be wrong about this, most states you have to legally go to school until like your think 8th or ninth grade, right? I'm making this up, right? Or if you don't, your teacher get, I mean, your parents get in trouble, right? But is it better for someone to go to school where they're not really learning anything? And it's like, the teacher like teach the middle, or is it better like some random kid, like, okay, I'm really interested in, engineering. I'm not gonna go to school. I don't need English. I don't want this stuff. I'm gonna go quit school. I'm gonna go to YouTube University and learn like that.
Well, homeschooling,
Mhm.
right? Like, that's why a lot of parents why homeschooling is so popular in the United States is because I'm not the only one who is of the opinion that we're not doing a good job, and a lot of if you're in a position where you can and you want to homeschool your child, there's lots of opportunities to do that. And in fact, yeah, for some folks, that means Khan Academy, that means YouTube University, but
I
yeah,
forgot all about Khan Academy. I
yeah,
forgot all about that one.
yeah.
But so one thing I have against homeschooling, like don't be wrong, like you want to get homeschool your kid, and like you and your husband or you and your spouse both have PhDs in education, learning, or like you're kind of like smart. Yes, but like if you're a single parent and you're working 3 or 4 jobs, you're struggling to meet it, and you're like a GED or high school by yourself, like how can you really teach your kid right?
Okay. So I'm going to tell you the story of Tupac Shakur and his mom, Feenie. Okay. Afeni didn't graduate high school. Tupac didn't. Did Tupac graduate? Tupac might have graduated. But in any case, Afeni actually defended herself when her and the other Black Panthers got brought up on charges. And she's not a lawyer. She never went to law school. Just because you don't have the degrees doesn't mean you're not brilliant, right? Because there's people I've gone through graduate school, right? I've met lots of people with PhDs. Also met lots of people who never graduated high school that I think are absolutely brilliant. So I don't think, especially in the United States, that an academic credential equals intelligence. And so, but to your point about like being a single parent, the bigger blocker there is that having to work multiple jobs and literally not having the time and space to be able to devote to your child the kind of education that you'd like for them to have. I think that the bigger issue is the monetary issue, not the will or the intelligence.
Okay. Um, so next, so a lot of people when you're a kid, like you're really curious, you're asking questions. Most people lose that as they go older, right? Is
Yep.
there a way we think we can like re-energize the curiosity in like older people or people in general after they become an adult?
I think it's about getting to the root of why they lost their curiosity. Because if it's been something that was sort of like beat out of them, punished out of them, your approach is going to be different versus someone who just never had that nurtured, right? It wasn't that it was inherently like punished. So and for a lot of people, it's for conformity purposes, right? Like that's why they want you to all be of the same common mind think is because you need to work as a unit. And I'm thinking of the military here, right? Like you need to be able to do that to survive as a unit. So the way you would deal with a person who feels like they're hampered or limited, or this is the only way to think is going to be different under those circumstances than if you're working with someone who's just like, I've never thought about it that way. Like literally, I was having a conversation with someone who's a therapist. We were talking about the whole rape culture piece about the thing that's been going viral about would you rather be with a bear or a man alone in the woods, that kind of thing. Um, and I was saying, like she thought that was a great conversation. I said, had you considered though that when you're putting women in those situations where they're having to recount trauma, that actually can be a type of trauma porn, right? Like people who are not interested in your safety, who aren't interested in really, keeping you like helping you work through it. They just are fascinated. It's trauma porn, right? They're just fascinated by the fact that this actually happened to you. Wow, tell me more. In the meantime, you're breaking down because you're literally reliving that experience, right? So it's really about like thinking about the fact that people come at things and interpret things differently and have different experiences, and you have to be more sensitive about that. Like before you just dive in with here's the way to go, recognize the person sitting in front of you and how that's going to land with them. Like that's a big piece that I think we're missing, and that would be my argument for why you want to go to school as opposed to being homeschooled. Is I mean, we all went through the experiment during COVID, right, where we had to be away from other people and isolated. And I've seen that in terms of social development with, my niece and nephews, right? They were teenagers during COVID. And my niece was just here visiting from Canada and she was scared to do everything. And I was noticing when we're riding on the link, just seeing her like making assumptions about people who are literally doing nothing. It's just the story she's telling herself in her head because she hasn't had enough socialization and practical experiences to know that no, that guy isn't doing XYZ. He's literally minding his own business, doing his own thing. And it's you telling yourself that story because you had an experience with someone who looks like him at the dollar store where you work part time. You're applying this to something where it doesn't apply. And it's only because she's had limited experiences. So for that purpose, the socialization aspect of going to school, there's something to be said about having experiences, learning your social skills and learning how to interact with other people. That's my primary argument against homeschooling. So if you're not going to augment that somewhere else, right? Like, because you can absolutely make up for that socialization. And in some cases, that's why people homeschool as well, is they think kids are shitty, right? Like you're all the bullying, like no one wants to go back to middle school. That sucked, like that kind of thing. Just, I don't want to put my kid through that. But it's still important to consider that that's another function of school is now you not just you and your parents, it's another environment. It's broadening out your social circle and there's lessons to be learned there.
I always thought this was crazy, right? I don't know anyone who said they had a good experience 8th grade, 8th grade, right? Everyone he's experienced, but yet decades, years later, 8th grade is still the same, right? Nothing's changed, right? Like, man, like every one person I know, man, junior high was hard. Even the pauper kids, the people got bullied, what the case to be, every kid, the pretty ones, the not so pretty, every kid, athletes, nerds. I hated 8th grade, hate junior high, but yet we still make kids do the same thing, right?
Yep.
It's like, man, what are we doing here, right? Like, I don't know.
We're not learning our lessons is what we're doing here, right? And I didn't even go to, I didn't go to school in the United States. I went to school in Canada, and I went to a secondary school in grade 8, actually. So for me, our elementary school ended in grade 7. Most of the kids that I went to school with went to a junior high that goes from 8 to 10, and then they would eventually matriculate into the secondary school to do 11 and 12. Because my mom wanted me to be in the gifted program and they didn't offer it at the junior high, she made a petition for me to go to the secondary school to start in grade 8. And what was interesting about that is all those kids in the gifted program were had all gone to elementary school together. Watson Elementary was an experimental school for gifted children at that time. I actually tested for it when I was 6 years old and was supposed to go, but my mom didn't want me to go on a bus and have to do it as a little 6-year-old child. She was just like, nope, nope. She goes, that's later. So by the time I got to grade 8, it's like, okay, now it's time. You're going to lose out if we don't put you into this gifted program in grade 8. So for me, it was a huge transition, right? So elementary school in a very small town, 500 people, right? So our little country school had multiple grades in it. And by the time I got to 7th grade, I'd known all these kids, right? Like these are kids I'd always played with, played sports together, went to school together. It's a small town. Whatever community activities, everybody knew everybody. Now, all of a sudden you pull me out of that environment and then throw me into the secondary school environment where I'm the youngest and there's people who go up to grade 12. And I used to wear glasses, like really serious Coke bottle glasses, right? Like kind of make you smack your head on the desk, heavy glasses. So the other thing that happened, not only was I going to a school where I didn't know anybody, I got contact lenses. And all of a sudden, so like, when the girl takes her glasses off, they're
Yeah.
like, holy smokes, right?
Okay.
So that was my experience. So I never had this experience of being a pretty girl ever. Like I was just the kind kid and the smart kid, right? So I was always one who had done my work before everyone else and would help everybody else. And I actually got put up 4 grades when I was in 1st grade, right? So I didn't go to the gifted school. So they put me up into 4th grade with my older brother. So you can imagine that must have been a real blast for him, right? His 6-year-old sisters, they're like, no, that's not how you spell beautiful, Paul. It has enough of you in it,
Yeah.
So he didn't love that. But for the most part, I was a very popular kid because I was a kind kid and I was an athlete and I always helped people. Like for me, I was always about helping people out first. But all these other kids that I went to school with had always been told how smart they are and how good they are. And they're like the best of the best and all of this. And then I come in and I'm the only outsider and me with my weird way of thinking about things. And I always had different ideas for them. So I got picked on by the smart kids and I got picked on with these other kids. And then I had all the boys who wanted to pick me up and throw me in lockers and put me on water fountains and all this. And I had no idea about none of that because I was only like 12, so yeah, it was a weird time. And plus, my older brother by that point was, I'm in grade 8, he's in grade 12, so he's a senior, and all of his buddies are all like, "Hey, who's your younger sister?" So it's super awkward for everybody. So yeah, I don't have the best memories, but that was just generally like all through my time at Sardis from 8 to 12, because I went all of mine at the same place. So eventually, having to go through school with all these shitty kids for 5 grades, it kind of sucked. And I couldn't wait by the time by the time I got to 11, I was just like, dude, I'm done. And my mom was just like, just hang in there, Linda, because in Canada, we have to take provincial exams. Like, you do your SATs and ACTs here. So we take provincials, and that determines not only like your graduating grade, like 50% of your graduating grade, it also can qualify you to get scholarships, right? So I had to kick ass on provincials and I had to kick ass on scholarships. Otherwise I wasn't going to college. So you're asking me about my parents being highly educated, highly smart, but both immigrants and both ran their own businesses. So if I didn't get scholarships, I was not going to college. So yeah.
Yeah. So like you just mentioned, a lot of parents, they tell the kid you're special, right? But actually most kids are not special. But are those kids being damaged? Like, are they like by being told they're special or not? And vice versa, you have a kid who's actually special and they're like, okay, just a regular kid. Is that damaged in any kind of way? Is it positive?
I think, people talk about having mommy issues and daddy issues, like you can definitely put it on your parents, but at some point you have to take accountability for yourself. Um, I don't know. I mean, I think it's more generational in terms of how we're raised. Like you talk about the Gen X kids, like we were like this, how we were drinking out of the garden hose and, your parents kick you out and you didn't come home till the streetlights come on. It's just, you're just built differently because of that. As far as like, I do think most parents think their kids are special. And I think it's important, like for them to, like, even if you're not like academically gifted by however the academic, intelligence tests go, I don't put a lot of credence in there. I think people don't know what their value is a lot of the times just because no one ever brings it out in them. I do think everybody's special. You have to be. You're a unique combination of DNA, man.
So next, why? Hope I asked this question right. But why is some people closed minded, some open minded? Example, like close. You tell someone 2 + 2 is 4. Okay. Someone else says, well, 1 + 1 + 1 is 4 too. The closed mind, oh no, only 2 + 2 is 4, right?
Yeah.
Open minded people would be like, okay, no, there's other ways to get to 4. It could be 8 - 4 is 4, right? Why do you think some people are like closed minded, so to speak, closed minded minds to other people like open, like learn new possibilities?
Well, have you ever seen that meme where they have the one person standing on this end and the other person standing on this end? They have that figure that goes like this. From this person's perspective, that's a 9. This person's perspective, that's a 6. It's perspective, right? And some people are closed-minded, it has to do with the way that they're socialized, and also what we were talking about earlier, when if you've been punished for stepping out of line. If you have experiences where you're encouraged, you're reinforced for being audacious, for being stepping outside the box, that's why you are the way that you are. Like, I know that I'm the way that I am because of the way that my parents shaped me up. I mean, I am almost a spitting image of my dad, but I'm also a lot like my mom. Like, I didn't even realize until my mom passed. My mom passed away first. And it wasn't until my mom passed away that I realized how much I'm actually like her, because my entire life, everybody told me how much I was like my dad. And the reason they did that is because misogyny. Like, even my dad would even say stuff to me. Like, when I started getting pretty as a teenager, my dad started to treat me differently because boys started to treat me differently, right? I remember like 11 years old, the first time some boy made some comment about my ass, right? And I was like 11. So I'm all like, well, what do you mean? And plus I was still wearing the Coke bottles and I was, but I was a gymnast, right? So I had a physique of sorts. But then, yeah, as soon as I started getting pretty and my dad started recognizing this, like I kept saying that to him, like I was telling you about, throwing in lockers and being put on water fountains. I go, why are they doing that, Dad? And they're just like, it's because they like you. And it's like, well, why are the girls in the locker? Like, why are these people being so shitty? It's because they're jealous of you. And I'm like, well, why? What am I, what are they jealous of? And they're like, because they think you're better than them. And I'm all like, why do they think you're better than them? I'm not better than them. He goes, yeah, you're not better than them. He goes, you're different from them, but you're not better than them. And that was something my dad always beat into my head, like from a very young age. Just because you look the way that you look, just because you excel at sports, just because you excel at certain things doesn't make you better. It just makes you different. And so I think that's a really important message.
So back to the perception thing and the 6 and 9. Like suppose there's 2 people there. One says a 6, one says 9. A third person comes up and say, "Hey, I actually wrote this myself. I meant it as a 6." For the person who said it's 9, they say, "Okay, it's a 6." Or should the person who says it's 9 keep his perspective? Even though, hey, I think it's 9. I know you said you wrote it, you said it's 6, but I don't care what you said. I don't care if you wrote it. I think it's a 9.
Okay, I'm going to tell you a story about that because it's one of my favorite ones. So when I was in grade 8, I had to read The Edible Woman by Margaret Atwood. And so this is before that came out, and this is before she even wrote Handmaid's Tale. So Margaret Atwood wasn't like the cultural icon that she is then at that time. And I remember when we read Edible Woman, I had an interpretation, and this is one of the things that always pissed me off about literature class and why I liked math so much, because math is the right answer. But I had come up with an interpretation from the Edible Woman that my lit teacher was like, no, I don't think that's what Margaret Atwood meant at all. And I was like, well, that's how it landed with me. How can that be wrong? And she's like, no, your interpretation's wrong. I'm like,
What?
yeah. And this is okay. And this is an advanced, enriched, gifted English class. Okay. And this is what I'm hearing. But one of the benefits of being in one of these enriched, gifted classes is that we had special guests. And at the end of that year, we actually had none other than Margaret Atwood, right? And this was, we read Edible Woman earlier in the year, and then she came towards the end of the year. But that sat in my craw. That sat in my mind. And so we had the opportunity to ask her questions. My hand was up. And I was just like, okay, Miss Atwood, blah, 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 blah. This is what I thought. What would you take on that? And Margaret Atwood, the writer of the book, told me that is a very creative and inspiring interpretation of that. She didn't say it was wrong. She didn't say it was right, but she didn't say it was wrong. But in my years, I heard a compliment and I just shot daggers looking at my teacher after that, because it's like, how can your interpretation be wrong? And even my dad told me that, she's full of shit. Don't worry about it. Like, that's what my dad would say all the time. Like, no, they're full of shit. Don't worry about it. But yeah, I thought that was pretty funny. So just because someone's an authority doesn't mean that they should be the one to sway you. Like, I'm a big believer in don't talk about it, be about it. Prove it to yourself. And once you've had direct experience, lived experience, you're going to be hard pressed to be convinced of something else. Don't just rely on authority. Be curious about it for sure. Like, but be just as curious about the guy who's down on the street asking you for your change, what his opinion is. I don't think you should be more curious because someone thinks that they're an authority. Um, and I've argued with lots of people, like, don't even get me started on Dawkins and somebody like these intellectual people. They're from Oxford. Give a fuck, like, we're serious. I mean, come on.
Exactly, exactly. So from your point of view, why is building a learning organization so important to success?
Building a learning organization. Tell me more about what you mean by that.
Like, like some like just ingraining learning into what you do every day as a startup or a company.
Mm.
Make sure people learn, sure people are open to learning and improving, so to speak.
So having kind of that lifelong learning mindset more so than like having an L&D department
Yes,
within their
yes,
company.
yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I think especially the world that we live in today with technology evolving so fast that if you don't adopt the mindset of there's also always something more to learn, you're going to get left behind and you're also going to be taken advantage of. And I see that happening a lot with technology and just with the way that we've sort of hierarchically prioritized math and science over all else. Like, that's the holy grail. That's the most important skills to have. And so if you're early in your academic career, somebody tells you you're shitty at math, and I mean, people tell me that, and I'm all like, dude, I was a math scholar when a Goss scholar. That's like a recognition in Canada when I was like in 8th grade, right? I'm almost like, and even when I went back to graduate school and I'm taking biomechanics online, my biomechanics teacher, even though I already had a PhD by this point and I taught statistics, was trying to tell me that, oh, you need to go to remedial math. I'm like, no, you wrote a shitty question with a really poor assessment. I didn't understand what you were asking. Now that I understand what you're asking, don't assume it's because I don't have the math skills. But that's where people go, is they try to use mathematics and science and that knowledge as some kind of like gatekeeping effect, right? It's like, oh, well, you just don't understand stochastic modeling. You just don't understand blah, blah, blah. I'm like, shut the fuck up. You don't know what I understand. I don't think you're doing a very good job of explaining it. That's what I think. So yeah, so I think more the problem is that we get indoctrinated in the way that we're educated. And that tells us or teaches us that we're not capable of learning. And I think that there's lots of different ways to learn. And I think the way that we teach in schools is probably not the best way for people to learn, especially if you're not interested in reading and math. Like, if those aren't the areas, like if you're more of a physical person, if you're a person who likes to play in the dirt, or you like to get your hands dirty, or you like to daydream, being able to sit still and sit pretty and listen and, put on the listening face. I mean, that's just an act. That's just some drag you put on for somebody else. You're putting on a show.
You hear all the time, like people say, kids in school need to learn math or education or fine arts, all this stuff, learn how to do like financial, all this stuff they want to learn. But most kids only go to school like what, 8 months of the year, 6 hours a day, right? So, what do you think kids should be learning in school, right?
So we have this assumption that kids are these empty vessels that need to be filled with stuff, that they don't know things, that they don't have inherent interests themselves. I think maybe you should talk to your kids. You should you should pay attention to what your kid's drawn to. And like John Dewey, wrote about this kind of progressive education over 100 years ago that taps into the interests of the kid. And instead of being through the lens of the curriculum that every kid has to go through, and this is grade 1 and this is grade 2 and all of that, it's more like, what is the specific skills that you want that kid to learn, and how do they learn it through the things that they're already interested in? That is literally how I did revolutionize education when I built my first adaptive learning program called the Virtual School. I sold that right before I went to work for Paul Allen back in the 90s. But yeah, it was all based on this idea of, what are you interested in? What's your aptitude in that? And then how do I use that as the springboard or the jumping off point for you to explore and learn these other things? So starting from like, let's say like, okay, I was a gymnast, right? How could I have learned about math through gymnastics? How could I have learned about reading through gymnastics? How could I have learned about these other things through gymnastics? Like taking that as a lens instead of taking, okay, by grade 1, you should be reading at blah, blah, blah. Like it's so stupid and pointless because I mean, it's teaching to, again, back to that magical middle thing. It's not going to catch the kids' attention necessarily, and only a certain proportion are going to be successful. Like the fact that it's okay for kids to get C's, like really, it's okay, or to let people fail, and that's fine, and you're not getting sued for malpractice. Make that make sense.
Yeah, definitely. So you've been doing learning some kind of like last 30 years, correct?
Professionally, like people have been paying me money to, yeah.
So how, from your point of view, how has learning changed during that time period?
Oh, the technology has changed, right? Like when I was a kid, I was writing programs on an Apple IIe. You had a 5 1/4 floppy disk that was your program, and then you had 5 1/4 that was your operating system. And now we have like all these devices like pins and phones and all kinds of things where you can learn anything you want to learn, and it's right at your fingertips. I mean, it's the days of Encyclopedia Britannica are over, like
Remember back in the day, they were telling us, you're not gonna have a calculator in your pocket all the time. You got to do this math.
they were wrong, weren't they?
Long as fuck, as they say, right? And like, like nowadays, like, there's more, stuff on our phone than like some information, like than ChatGPT, That's a good one. Like, what you take on like kids using ChatGPT to like do schoolwork or education stuff, right? Is like good things, the cheating. Like, I don't think I think it's using resources, but I'm sure a lot of old school teachers, like,
So there's an AI for that. It's literally an aggregator, right? You can find an AI for anything. ChatGPT in particular, I'm not a huge fan of because I actually interviewed at OpenAI before 3.5 was released, and I had a pretty interesting conversation before I passed on that.
Mhm.
But yeah, August 2022, the whole thing. It was literally got laid off from the job I loved that I was working at the time. 1 week after my father passes away, and then 2 weeks after that, they come knocking on my door. And I'm not into the harmony model, man. Like, not all information is equally valid. But as far as the cheating question goes, I think no. I think you need to think about better ways of evaluating.
Mhm.
So if you're worried that they're using ChatGPT or any GPT, any kind of conversational AI engine to do your homework for you. I mean, how's that different from every kid who ever asked me, Linda, let me write that essay for me, definitely pay me,
Yeah.
you know? Um, but I think it just challenges teachers to think about how would you use ChatGPT or how would you use Midjourney or any other generative AI tool? Like there's an AI. So I'm actually sit on the board of a generative AI company. And the CEO of that company was demonstrating how she basically used her chatbot to create an outline. She took that outline, threw it into Gamma AI. Gamma AI will create either a website or a document or a PowerPoint based on that outline, like literally just generates it for you. You pick the themes and boom, you have this presentation that would have taken you 4 hours to do in PowerPoint. You have done in less than 15 minutes, and it's better than you would have done. So as if you're a teacher evaluating that presentation, you're going to dock that kid because they used her generative AI and they used Gamma AI to create something. They just work smart, man. Like I would be rewarding that kid, right? It's like, way to go. And plus, if they're the one to tip you off and say, yeah, I use Gamma AI, and the teacher now knows that Gamma AI exists, great. But I think you just need to be more like, if you're worried about cheating, you're worried about you're doing it wrong. You're worried about the wrong things. That ship sailed, man. That ship sailed back when I was working at Apex back in the 90s. So come on.
Yeah. So, here's a question for you. So you have introverts, extroverts, you have different generations like boomers, Generation X, millennials, other generations. Do like all these different demographics learn differently?
I am We are more than our demographics, right? Which I've alluded to a couple times now. I think we are products of those. That's one data point that factors in. But I mean, I'm Gen X. I know lots of other people who are Gen X that are definitely different learners than me. But we do also have some commonalities because we had that shared experience, right? But you could also use astrology to talk about that too, and just say, well, yeah, we all have the same, our placements of Pluto and Neptune, and because of how astrology works, they're the same. That's just as valid as saying what generation you are makes a difference. So, I mean, there's tons of different ways of describing human behavior. I think use those tools more for self-analysis than anything else. Like, how does that resonate for me? How does that land with me more so than saying this is how the world actually is? I think the world, again, reading a lot of Don Jose Rez, right? We have our personal dream, and then we have the dream of the planet, which is everybody's personal dreams as, taken all together.
So on the bio you sent me, you put, or maybe I got it from LinkedIn. I got it from somewhere.
Okay.
I specialize in innovative learning solutions and learning technology products. especially those that include extended reality and machine learning.
Yep.
Can you like do a deep dive on that? What that means? What you
Yeah.
do?
Yeah. So when most people think about, learning and development, and I get this a lot too, and I did do this kind of work early in my career, but mostly what they think about is like corporate learning. So developing, training classes that you'd take in the workforce or, compliance training or e-learning or that kind of thing. And early in my career, I did that. Like I said, my big claim to fame first one was working with Paul Allen and creating one of the first virtual schools. Like before that was a thing that everybody did. Like before there was online learning, we built that. So you're welcome. Because I remember when I was in grade 11 computer class and saying, this sucks. I'd rather just be at home. I could have just done this on a computer. And lo and behold, that's exactly what we did. We built AB classes to be delivered via the internet. So regardless of where you went to school, if your school didn't offer AP, you could still take it because you could do this new thing on this internet and you could take your AP class there. So that was the first big claim to fame. But then after that, I started developing the technologies. And then I just started working for tech companies because that put me closer to the technologies because I wanted to actually not just work with teachers and instructional materials. I wanted to work with the tech and develop technology that helped you learn. So before there was YouTube, I wanted to do YouTube, right? And for me, it was a matter of I was a fitness instructor. So I wanted to offer my fitness classes to people that used to take them with me in Victoria, that people used to take them with me in West Virginia. It doesn't matter where in the world you are, you should be able to do this. So yeah, I have my YouTube channel now where I do that, but I was talking about doing that in 2001 before there was YouTube. So that's why I got into technology is because I've had these ideas about how to do things. So by the time extended reality actually caught up, and debatably, I'm so concerned because of the data leakage, which nobody thinks of, by the way. And I'm not a big fan of the headsets because I wore those Coke bottle glasses. Sorry, I don't want to wear that thing on my head. It's uncomfortable. Let's let some women in there and people who are smaller framed in there so we can tell you. It's sort of not too different from like military gear. Like it took people forever to realize, oh, female soldiers, this isn't comfortable for them. I was like, well, no shit, Holmes. We're not built the same way. Like I'm a half a foot shorter than you and, 40 pounds lighter. And then different hip width. Can we change this, please, so I can be comfortable too? So
So Linda, do you consider yourself an ice skater, a theater person, a tech person, entrepreneur, a learner, a daughter? Like, what do you, or do you just consider yourself Linda?
I would say I am all of those people, right? Yes, I am all of those people, and I am also just Linda.
Okay.
I always like to quote Popeye, right? I am that I am. I am, I am, and that's all who I am.
So how do you like on a daily basis, like kind of, um, not play with the rules, like make sure all those rules stay in balance, you know?
I have rituals. I am a person that's kind of my spiritual side is I am a person who taps into rituals. Um, I do ground myself on a regular basis because I can get pretty out there with the technology and I get crazy ideas. And I do lucid dream as well and daydream as well as dream at night. So I have to try and, keep it 100 and make sure so where does the memories, is that a memory or is that just shit my brain made up? Like that's a constant thing. So yeah, part of my routine is like I live out in the hinterland in the wild. I have elk out there. It's nice. Every morning when I take my dog out, I ground myself, put my hand on a tree, take some deep breaths. And yeah, I try to you can't spend too much time in virtual world because it does mess with your mind, especially if you're someone who's already pretty creative and you can let your mind go there. Like a lot of people use psychedelics to do that. My brain just does that. I call it like getting high on your own supply. Like it's just what my brain will allow me to do. And I also think it's a skill that more people need to be able to tap into. And I'd love to help people with that. That's actually one of the things I'm working on with a client is like not just dream analysis, but what does dreaming actually do for you, right? So I'm super excited about that. I hope that dude doesn't, just burn out and lose all his money because it's such a good idea.
Yeah. So talk about some more. You talked earlier about the dream that I guess Vertex Richmond's like dream tech startup you're working for, like they're trying to combine dreams or something. Can you talk
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah. Oh, it's so cool. So the guy's name is Patrick Lane. His app that he's developing is called Dream Egos. He's got it in beta right now. And the only functionality that's working currently is the ability to record your dreams, because that's really the first step. Like a lot of people don't even remember their dreams, right? But the discipline of recording your dreams, whether that's just, a notebook that you have beside your bed. What Patrick's app does is that you can use, voice recorder, you can put in pictures. Of course, my brain is all like, you can describe it and then you'll use the AI to create the picture, right? Because that's really what it looked like in my dream. Or you can just type it in, whatever. And then it just records over time. And he's got a couple of ideas about how he wants to, like, building community, like getting to know people through your dreams, because power of suggestion being what it is, if you read other people's dreams, it actually helps stimulate you to dream. If you've been reading about, like we were just talking today, he and I, about the era of the late 80s to the 90s, which was the era of the Mikes, right? Mike Tyson, Michael Jackson, Michael Jordan, right? He's been dreaming about Michael Jordan all the time. And he doesn't even like Michael Jordan, but he's been dreaming about him a lot. And he's literally met Michael Jordan's brother-in-law. So what I'd mentioned to him, I go, that's really interesting, Patrick, because recently I've had dreams about both Michael Jackson and Mike Tyson. I wonder if I'm going to have a dream about Michael Jordan now. Then I go, and if you do have a dream about those other two Mikes, then you let me know too, because power of suggestion being what it is. But that's what he was noticing, is that if you start reading other people's dreams, do you start to have the same kind of dream? Like, he literally had logged a dream and then read somebody else's dream who hadn't read his, and it was almost exactly the same dream. And he just, wow, this is so cool. So as far as the recording piece, that's just one of them. The piece that I'm going to be working on most deeply with him is going to be the AI conversational interface, which basically can help you go down different paths. Some people want to learn how to remember their dreams, right? That's the first starting point. If you don't even remember them in the first place, how do you go through that? Some people have really terrifying dreams, right? Night terrors, PTSD related dreams, that kind of thing. How can you therapeutically work that? Some people want to explore psychedelic dreaming. Some people want to explore dream yoga. Some people, there's all these different types of paths that people could go down. So mine is more about what part of that can I actually use semantic analysis and sentiment analysis to give dreamed interpretation? And then what other pieces can we, like, he envisions a marketplace where people can get, routed to therapy and to products, and that there's actually, like, I can't remember that, magnetic resonance tools that are out there right now that are getting a lot of popularity that basically are supposed to help you lucid dream. And it's a, some kind of like IoT tool. But yeah, so he's got big plans for that. And I think it's, again, it's a really good idea.
Is he gonna be able to like record your visual dreams? Is there a way, like, is he gonna like put scans in your head and they're like the AI's gonna, like, record your actual visual dreams, like a video of your brain doing a dream?
That tech, that's the tech that I'm talking about that already exists. So I'd mentioned, like, someone else had pointed me to a particular type of headset that does that. And I pointed that to Patrick, and he's like, he goes, I know some that are similar. I hadn't known about that one. So it's just, the power of connection, right? Somebody's like, hears that I'm doing work on dreaming. It's like, have you seen this? I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. So yes, at some point it's going to all come together. But I'm really curious about doing it without the technology, like just doing it through the recording alone, through the community alone, by, the vibe, like, can you actually, I don't, so much of me doesn't like to demystify the magic, and that's, people want it to be all science and measurement. And mine is all about, well, maybe you don't have the right tools. Like, you think this thing doesn't, I've done science on it and science says that's not right. I'm like, maybe your tool is not sensitive enough. Maybe you're not using the right assessment. Just because you didn't hear that sound didn't mean that sound didn't happen. Your dog heard it. So I think it's just a matter of perception. And then, is the tool the right measure in the first place? It's just like when we were talking about learned helplessness, right? Where we used to shock dogs until they learned they couldn't avoid the dog, and or the dog couldn't avoid the shock. So it just learned to take it. And Seligman used to say, oh, well, the dog isn't really stressed or anything. It's not harmful. He was saying that really for his own placation. Then he goes off and does positive psychology as his next, for the second half of his life. So I'm all like, yeah, you felt guilty. And then, 20 years later, they actually do biochemical analysis. And they said, yeah, the dog's cortisol levels are off the roof. You can't tell them they're not stressed. Of course they are. And that became the medical model of how PTSD diagnosis came from. So this idea of, we just aren't measuring the right things yet, there's a precedence for that. So I'm not sure that the way we measure dreams, I'm not sure. That's me hedging my bets. I don't think the way that we measure dreams is the right way to measure dreams. When I was in grad school, we had a sleep clinic in our psych department. I wasn't in clinical, but I was a subject in that because I'm a good sleeper. And I am unusual in that I go into deep sleep really quickly, yet it's really easy. So the time that I'm supposed to be dreaming is relatively limited, but I have super vivid dreams and I can remember them all. And I questioned them. I said, I lucid dream and I daydream. Is the pattern the same when I'm not asleep? And they're like, can you make yourself do it? And that's the magic, right? Like, that's the part that I'm saying is like, if you can't do it on recall, and plus I just by that point I was sick of being a dancing monkey, and I was just like, I'm not performing for you, like I know what I know. But that's where I think we are. And that's where I think that what people think of as pseudoscience, maybe it isn't. Maybe we need to be more curious and not just stop there and just say, no, no, that's if there are so many different civilizations that were studying it and coming to the same conclusions independently, there's got to be something more to it.
All right, so I got several questions, right?
Okay.
So first one, so back when a little kid, 5, 6, 7, 8, I watched a scary movie, right?
Hmm.
Then I had this scary dream, right? That the
Hmm.
demon and monster came to our window and grabbed me, right? I woke up screaming, it seems so real, right?
Yep.
Like it was like so terrifying. It was like scarred me for life. Even to this day, that demon is in my mind sometimes. I say, hey, Jason, I'm still here. I'm still gonna get you right. Why do you think that is, right? It's like I was just so scarred by that dream.
Who's that demon?
So it was a movie I watched, and it's like a family. They're traveling, right, and they're supposed to turn down this road to the left. They turn down one road earlier to the dirt road and go to like a house of demons, right? And so the demons are chasing them for the rest of the movie, right? So just some random demon. I don't know if it represented anything, but it's the demon out of the movie, right?
Hmm.
And to this day, sometimes I can still see the movie in my mind, like, hey, I didn't get you last time, Jason. I'm still getting I'm like, okay, this is bullshit. Like, obviously, there's no demons that can get me, right? Why do you think that's still so ingrained?
That demon means something to you. You
Yeah.
personalized, you personified that demon for
Mm.
yourself. That is the way that we remember things, is
Mm.
that, which I think is really interesting. There's a neuroscientist who I follow, who I really like. Her name is Carmen Simone. And she does a lot of research on how people perceive marketing, right? And people put a lot of money and effort into marketing and telling a story. But what they don't realize is that people generally remember things from a very personalized perspective. Like rather than remembering the details or the things that you think are salient, they'll remember the things that are important to them. Like I was wearing a blue sweater. It was really cold in the room that day, like things that mattered to them. So when I look at it from a dream interpretation perspective, it's an invitation for you. Well, who does that demon
Mm.
represent? So yeah,
Because most dreams you don't remember. For some reason, I remember this all
well,
these
power
years.
of suggestion.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was prompted by a scary movie that
Mm.
you watched, right? Like I had, because I've been watching Star Trek
Mm.
Discovery a lot. I've been having a lot of really weird dreams about,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
Like, I
But
was like, "No, the demon came through this window." Like Jason, my friend, like
yeah,
Jason, there was no glass broken. Like,
yeah,
no, he came to the window and got me right.
yeah,
And you can't tell me shit else. Like, no, I'm not hearing what you're saying. Right? I know
yeah,
what happened to me. Right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's an invitation for you to interpret what that means to you and under what circuit, like what do you need to learn from that? Like that's how I think a lot of these things that we're thought that this is how you are, instead of telling you how you are, it is an opportunity for you to practice your introspection and intuition
Mm.
skills. Like that's how you what does that mean? Why do you keep having that? What does it mean for you? Who does it represent? So yes, it was suggested. That was just, the stimulus that sent it
Mm.
off. But what does it actually mean to you? And what does that you need to resolve? So it's an opportunity for inquiry, and I think it's super interesting.
Mm.
Like, I used to have and this is part of what doing this work with Patrick, recording my dreams over and over again, is just like, I had a couple that I recorded were, like, nightmares that I had, like, over and over and over again at certain points in my life, and then I just stopped having them. So as I went through that exercise of thoughtfully thinking through, what did that actually mean? Like, why did I actually like, they started to make sense in retrospect. Like, they really were, in some cases, premonition or precognition, and that's or other things are just like, it's the way your brain is trying to make sense of you. Because like for me, and what I'm doing right now with that log of data that I just collected on my own dreams is like I'm doing semantic analysis in part for me to understand how much of what I dream is actual memory, like shit actually happened. And then the rest, like what are these details that my brain filled in that never actually happened? And in some cases, I have to go back and ask my friends. Like I had this one dream that was me and one of my girlfriends, and I asked her a bunch of times, I go, "Did that actually happen?" Well, we were pretty drunk. "Did that actually happen?" And she's like, "No, that literally, legit did not happen. You totally made that up." I go, "We weren't at Cultus Lake and we weren't and this didn't," and, so I think a lot of especially when they're with people that is talk to those people and it's like, "Hey, I had this," and get their take as well, because that can give you more information too.
So next one, like there's times like hopefully other people do this too. I hope I'm not the only one. I'm sure I'm not. Like you have a dream, right? And you wake up and you're like, man, that's a good dream. And you go back to sleep. And you go back to sleep and
Yeah, can't bring it back.
yeah. Or sometimes I do bring it back sometimes,
Uh-huh.
right? So
That's lucid dreaming.
Let's
Yeah.
call lucid dreaming. Can you
Yep.
talk about that? What is that?
Yeah, so lucid dreaming is the ability to actually recognize that you're in a dream and be able to actually sort of steer the dream.
Yeah, because sometimes I'm wide awake. Oh shit, that's a pretty good dream. Let me put like down. And okay, sometimes, of course, you go back to sleep. Sometimes you don't. But every time
Yeah.
I go back to sleep, it's like, okay, I can just pop back in.
Yeah.
That's craziness. That's
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah.
Insanity. All right, next one. This one, when I say this, people think I'm off my rocker, right? So this is my theory, right? I have no proof of this, whatever. So I think that, when you have a dream, it's actually another version of yourself somewhere else trying to communicate with you. Whether it's like Jason Cavness, a multiverse somewhere or another verse somewhere. I think that's that Jason trying to communicate you, either trying to warn you something or trying to communicate with you, right?
Yeah, and again, maybe it's just because 'cause I've been reading a lot or been watching a lot of Star Trek Discovery, and there literally is parallel universes in that series. Um, yeah, I mean, but sometimes they're not. Sometimes that's a way to communicate with you so that you recognize a pattern of someone who's similar to you. Like, I literally had a dream relatively recently on the 26th. See, there's my sick memory again, right? That was, about the Golden Lady, and in my dream, I was identifying myself as the Golden Lady. It was kind of one of those, like, The Empire Strikes Back, revealed Luke
Mhm,
is Luke.
mhm.
Um, but so I woke after I woke up and I reported that dream, I was convinced that I was the Golden Lady in the dream, and then later that day, I met with my, collaborators of other solopreneurs that I meet with on a regular basis, and lo and behold, I should let me preface this. So the Golden Lady dream was taking place in a place that I'd never been, where there was all this lush fruit and gardenias and just everything like I associate with Taurus energy. Like this is me being all astrological. Um, and there were these animals that were with the Golden Lady that were I kept thinking they were cats, but they're not cats, right? So it's animals that I'd never seen before. They had a whole mad tea party vibe and that they were setting up food for us and we were eating food. And then we walked on this beach somewhere, me and the Golden Lady, and we're having a conversation. And she was asking me about like my biggest regret in life and all kinds of different stuff. And so I thought that, like, yes, this is a parallel universe. This is me from another universe coming back and telling me. But then later in that meeting, Kara, who is one of the people who is the facilitators of that, who is about 5 years older than me and just someone who I think is a gift in my life, because she always just straightens me out when I get it wrong, which I love that. Um, she shows up on the Zoom call with platinum blonde hair. She's black, okay, so she's darker complected, but platinum blonde hair, gold shirt, like literally the Golden Lady. Like she was literally the Golden Lady, and she's glowing, and she lives in Tulum in Mexico. And so the fruit, the vegetation, the beaches, that's what I had just dreamt about. And that wasn't me. It was Kara, like or Kara, excuse me. I'm saying her name wrong. Um, and that just kind of blew my mind. And so haven't told her about that yet. Like I did mention the Golden Lady, but I didn't go into the details of the dream. But I'm going to have that conversation with her because I could see that as a precog. I could see that as me and Kara potentially doing a collaboration in Mexico at some point in the future. So, so it's just really interesting, like what we might think our dreams are initially, we might get clues later on. So I think there absolutely is precog and premonition in dreams, but a lot of it is just like other types of astrology and all these other kind of mystical things. It's really not about predicting the future as much as it is self-understanding, self-reflection, working on your own intuition.
Is there something out there that says, the youngest person ever to have a dream is like 3 years old, or something saying like,
Oh, how do you know?
or,
Like, that's what I say to
yeah,
that.
or something saying like
Yeah.
the oldest person have a dream is like 97 years old? Like,
Yeah.
is there age like where people stop having dreams, or age where people start having dreams?
Well, there's also, do animals dream? Like I think that we made a decision that children think a certain way, animals think a certain way, plants don't think at all. And I call bullshit on all that. It's like, how do you know? You don't know. You've made an assumption based on a hierarchy, based on some kind of supremacy model. And I'd push back on that. I think it's just a matter of being able to measure and articulate. And also just some people forget how to articulate it or never learned how, right? Like they never learned how to recall a dream. They know something's going on. And you can't tell me my dog's not dreaming. He's sitting there kicking his legs. Come on, he's totally dreaming.
Have you seen that thing recently where these people found this anthill, not an ant, but it's literally like 10,000 levels of labyrinths and stuff these ants built. They asked the scientists, like, does this prove that ants are smart? They're like, oh no, they're just like doing it because they're doing it. I'm like, oh, really? Like all these millions of ants just did this out of nature, right? There's no smartness to this, like no communication, no nothing. Cause they had like, where the ants had like all these we're like they're bringing like food to store, all this different stuff. Like, man, this is society, right? But all these scientists, oh no, we're just doing it right.
No, that's because that gives you, again, it's that whole hierarchy, right? It's like, I'm at the top of the food chain. I am the only one who thinks. Bullshit. The amount of communication that needs to happen between the ants and the way that we're communicating, you don't even know. Like, this is what drives me crazy. It's like, oh, let's go to Mars. Let's go. It's like, you don't even understand the species that we live with on this planet. You just want to dumb it down and assume that their lower level, whatever they're doing is some autonomic response. And I call bullshit on that. Even with plants and fungi underneath the earth, the way that they communicate, come on. I mean, people would tell us that, like, I had the best debate. I had someone who was trying to say, like, oh, you got to be a vegetarian because, it's inhumane to kill animals and blah, blah, blah. And, plants don't have feelings. I'm like, oh, really? Plants, do you ever sneeze when pollen comes out in the air? Like, they can take you out, man. And they are like microscopic in some cases, the kind of things they could use to kill you. So don't assume you're at the top of the food chain or that your manner of communicating is the way and the only way. I think there's a lot of untapped things that people don't know about how the other species that inhabit this planet with us communicate and create their own societies and their own civilizations. I think it's complete bullshit that we think humans are the only ones who do that.
So on TikTok, there's a thing going on with this lady. She says, "Hey, tell me the real thing. People need realness now." So people like telling weird things. There's one girl, not a girl. I think she's in high school, junior, like maybe like 18, 19. She goes, "Here's a weird thing for you. Whenever you get a flower, you pick the flower, and you smell the smell. That's not for your benefit. That's the flower warning other flowers that they're being attacked for them to defend themselves."
Mhm.
And then she said, and then if that's the case, that's really true. That fresh cut smell you do when you cut grass, that's the grass screaming because you killed it.
I believe that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, I've often when you're weeding in your garden and you start to get rashes because you're pulling out plants and is how is that different from uprooting other civilizations? I go, "No, this is the prize plant that gets to stay here. You are just a weed and you get pulled out." So I actually when I changed my perspective on how I actually even weed. I relocate everything. So everything's about the relocation
Mhm.
project, and I don't necessarily feel great about that, but I also recognize that as much as I love nature, I have to be able to control nature so that I can get what I want out of the crops that I am taking care of. And I feel a sense of ownership over the things that I brought to live on the property that can't move off the property, like the trees that were already there before I got there. Like how that's why I commune with them every morning. I just want to check in. Like I had one of my friends who was like, I have birch trees, right? And they're supposed you can tap them and get syrup or whatever. I'm like, yeah, but isn't that like their circulation system? Like, isn't that kind of what you're doing? It's like you're taking blood from them. And he goes, oh, it's fine. It doesn't bother them at all. And I go on and do a little more reading. It absolutely bothers them. It's not good for them. And it's like, it's all like, here, just suck some of my blood so you can get some of that sugar. Get out of here. So I just have a lot of respect for the other creatures, the other species that we share the planet with, and I don't assume that I know everything. I try to think about what is this trying to tell me, what's trying to be, are you, I don't, and also, talking about that, what's more dangerous, the bear or the man. I always find it interesting that how many people are scared of wild animals. Like I grew up, like I said, I'm rather wild myself. I'm indigenous, right? And so I've spent lots of time in the woods with wild animals. I've never been attacked. I had posted a picture not too long ago of walking around in Souk up in Vancouver Island and, mountain lion was just cruising on by and everyone's like, what did you do? I'm like, nothing. I took a picture of her,
Yeah.
she's pretty, that's all I did. And she kept doing her thing and I kept doing my thing. And it's people who are scared of wild animals. I always think it's really strange because it's like, well, they could attack you. I'm like, why? Because you would attack it? Because you would kill it? Is that so you would just assume that they have the same motives that you do? They're just trying to go about their day. They're not trying to bother you. For the most part, like a lot of times, I think it's interesting when creatures actually watch you and are interested. Like I have a lot of hummingbirds at my place. And even more so after my father passed away. And there's part of me that's like, oh, my dad's sending me hummingbirds, like that's what's happening here. Either that or no, you just have a lot of things that actually attract hummingbirds in your garden and all the feeders might help too. But I do and I also think it's really interesting that the elk that are on I share, my property with probably about 25, 30 elk it's their grazing range, right? So they'll cruise by. They never are scared of me. They're never scared of my dog. We all have mutual respect for each other, cruise around together, and everyone's all like, but that big elk back there, it's like, holy shit, you got to be careful. And I'm all like, why? He's just give him apples, like he's fine. He's not bothering me. And plus he leaves me poop and I put that in my garden and it's great fertilizer and all works out.
So back to trees, I could maybe make this up, but hasn't been proven like suppose you have like 10 trees, like called X trees, right? If you plant a tree that's not an X tree, those X trees will actually like strangle that foreign tree,
Root
like kill the
system.
roots. Yeah. Is that true? I've heard that before.
Depends if they're, have you heard of companion gardening?
No.
So companion gardening is when you plant plants together that actually coexist symbiotically. And so like I literally just moved some mint under my blueberry bushes because I need something that'll help deter the weeds. And those are companion plants. So those ones will intertwine their roots and they'll actually get along. It's just like people, maybe other species, like some species are perfectly adept at coexisting and other species are not. They will just go ahead and kill. Not that different in plants and fungi. Fungi, I think it might be different. I need to learn more about it. I'm just finding it really curious that I have all kinds of mushrooms popping up at my place, and that only happened in the last 8 years. So I think that that's super interesting
So why is being data driven so important to you?
because I think it's important that if you say something, you're able to measure it and prove it. Like it's not just some bullshit that, oh yeah, you should hire me because of XYZ. I think you should be able to show a return on what you have to offer. And so that's why I like to find out what's important to people. So what, like when people ask me, like I actually had this for somebody who wanted to hire me, what is a data-driven strategy? What does that mean to you? I'm like, and I said back to him, I think that's probably why he didn't hire me because he thought I was being weird. I don't know. But I said, well, it doesn't really matter what it means to me. It matters what it means to you. Because the idea is that you want to have a consistent definition because you're developing this program for your company. So, but to say that there is the data-driven strategy, like it's one thing that exists, like as a universal truth, nah.
So how did you become so involved with so many tech startups, especially AI, ML startups? How did that happen?
Because they're the ones doing all the innovative shit. So I've worked in tech for a really, really long time. I have worked at with the big tech companies as well. And that's part of why I broke off and started doing my own consulting is because I found that the big companies are not where the innovation's at. It's the startups. And also just because of who I want to serve as my clients, I want to serve the people who don't necessarily have the voices. I want to be able to get the better products out to market so that people can actually use them because there's a lot of people who are dissatisfied with the technology that's available and they think that that's all they can do because they've been told, well, I can't build an app. And I'm like, bullshit, of course you can. You just don't think you can because you think you need to be good at math, you need to be good at science, you need to be technical. Like it always cracks me up when some kid is all like, wow, you text so fast. Wow, look at you using Facebook or whatever they're surprised by. And I'm like, fuck you, I built this, like you should see what kind of algorithms I know how to build. But it just people make assumptions about you, like it's only for the young kids, It's like, first of all, challenge that. It's like if it's only for the young kids, they did their UX testing wrong because the population is more than just them, right? So if that text is too small and you can and your over 40 eyes need you to be able to make it bigger, then and you don't have that functionality, it's like, what are you doing? You're limiting your audience. And so this whole idea of, old dogs, new tricks, too old for tech, can't do this, can't learn that, bullshit. You're just not being inclusive enough in your design.
So I know you have like a 4-month process and you have like a guarantee
Mhm.
that process works. Can you talk to that, how that works?
Yeah, so that's really, I mean, it's an innovation process that I guarantee I can get your innovation built in 4 months or less, right? And a lot of times it's even faster than that, but I want to be able to define
Now,
what.
does that presume that the company has all the tech people they need, developers they need? It's like there's like parameters for this guarantee?
Of course.
Okay.
Of course, there's parameters, but there's also an agreement of what it is that we're gonna build in that time frame. The reason I do 4 months is, one, that's been pretty much my track record. A lot of times it takes less time than that, but it's really more for me to be able to balance my workload, right? So I don't overextend myself in terms of the whole point of consulting for me was to be able to work with multiple different clients, not just, "Oh, you work at Microsoft, so you can only work with Microsoft tech with Microsoft employees." Didn't wanna do that, like and it wasn't Microsoft, it was actually Oracle that was the case of, because I was there for, like, 10 years. But, and also, quite honestly, Oracle's tech was not particularly innovative, and literally was talking with one of my former colleagues there, and he's showing me a chatbot that he was so proud of, and I just didn't wanna tell him how ugly his baby was. But, like, even before I left Oracle, I built a better chatbot than what he did, and I'm like, "Dude, yeah, you need me, but I don't know how much I need this." Like, that's kind of where I am with my own consulting is that not everybody that needs me to work with them are people I wanna work with. So I'm very selective about who I work with. mostly interested in stuff that's really cutting edge that I know can make an impact. And that's generally who I pick to work with. And that's usually startups. The challenge with startups, of course, is that they generally don't have money. So in a lot of cases, that's me also is helping them find the money because I'm very good at like scary, freaky memory, right? It's also in my brain. I have all those connections and connecting the dots. That's my network of people too. So I'm not just about self-serving myself and getting clients for myself. A lot of times when I'm talking with people, I want to know how I can help them and best support them. And that might mean, oh, let me make this introduction to you, or oh, this person can build that for you. I love being that person as well. Like if I can be that neuron in the neural network, have at her.
So what is your business model? Like if a startup can't pay you, like you like take equity and get money later on, like how's that business model working for you?
For the most part, people pay up front. So that's how it is. Like, and I also work like generally, if you haven't worked with me before, it might seem like that's a big chunk of change to put forward. So I do offer smaller packages as well, where I'll do like 5 hours of consulting or 10 hours of consulting. And a lot of what I would shop to somebody, like if somebody, like today I was meeting with a client at Loon before I came here. She's got a number of different things and she already knows she wants to work with me. But I also like to say, let's work on a small piece first and tell me, and we talk about what it is that you want to be able to do. And then based on that, I'll say, that'll take me 5 hours. Like, no, no, it's way more work than that. I go, that'll take me 5 hours.
Mhm.
And so I'll offer them a 5 hour consulting package. Or if it's something that I know will take me 10 hours, like that's usually what I do is I give them a 5 or a 10 hour option. And almost any small piece of work that they want me to do, whether it's evaluating their product, whether it's building them a prototype, whatever, I can generally get it done in either a 5 hour or 10 hour framework. So I like to do that and offer that to people first before they make the deep dive in, because otherwise it seems like super expensive to work with you. The other time too, I mean, because startups, I mean, I've introduced people to incubators. I sit on a lot of incubator panels. And so I get brought in as like a expert speaker, whatever. And I will make a connection there as well. It's all like they'll talk about, I'm really interested in this kind of technology. It's like, oh, I just saw these guys present at demo days. They're down in Atlanta. Let me make that introduction. And I've literally had a lot of that, like a lot of serendipity for me. Like I was explaining that to one of the chief technical officers I used to work for. He's all like, you're just lucky. I'm like, serendipitous. Like that's for sure. Like even that day I was driving into the office and I'd left my key card and I'm behind, and someone pulls up behind me and I'm like, oh shit, now I'm stuck here. But the person who pulled up behind me was a friend of mine, as it turned out, and she had a key card, so I could let myself in, I could let her in, and I could get that. So that's the kind of thing that I think um, it happens to me a lot, and so I'm happy to make those kind of serendipitous introductions as well. So when I do triage calls, when I'm what I call my sorting process, right? Is it's really me. How can I best help you? And it's best helping you isn't always working with me. Best helping you might be pointing you to the money. It might be pointing you to the resource. It might be, you know, introducing you to a developer who can build that shit for you. So, yeah.
So how about this one? Like I'm sure maybe this has happened, but like, what happens like a founder wants to bring you on, but the founder's like, hey, like I want to bring you on, but I just have the time for that. I'm doing so much stuff. How do you convince the founder, no, you actually have the time to do this and you need to make time for this?
I'm very persuasive. So if it's a matter of time, time's an easy one. Um, and I can make the argument based on, whatever statistics make sense to them, whatever metrics make sense to them. Like this is what it's going to cost you. Like for me, because I'm really strong at math and I find out what's important to people and how they measure it, I can do the ROI pretty quickly and I can tell them that and then I can back it up, right? So I can show my work, right, about how we got there. Um, Most people that I get beyond that triage stage to and go to consult, almost everybody wants to work with me once we've gotten there. And it's really for me a matter of, can I balance this in with my workload and what else I have to do? So that's kind of where we go. I generally don't have people who say, if they say we don't have the time, we don't even go to the consult phase. Like if this is not a priority for you, I can say to them, it's like, well, 6 months down the road, I might not have space for you. That's why, I do the things in the 4 month windows is so that I can, plan my schedule. And in some cases I have had waiting lists where somebody wanted to work with me and I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm full. I can only take on 6 people at a time
And your customers mainly in Seattle, you're across the United States.
across the world.
Okay. And then how do you find your customers? You have like a marketing plan you do or like word of mouth?
They find me.
Okay.
So there's that old saying, some people say it's a proverb or an affirmation. I might say it's a spell. but it's um I don't chase, I attract. What I desire desires me back.
Okay.
And so I put out a vibe. I have had designed plenty of sales training early in my career, so I know that what we're doing right now in the world of social media is the volume sales model. And I'm a boutique girl. I don't want everybody, and I can only work with 6 people at a time. So I put it more like into people who are looking for significant value, and if people don't value me, then it's like, okay, see ya.
And so it's a 4-month process. What happens after the 4-month process? Of you stay on as a consultant, like maybe less intensive, or is it
Most
done?
people want to book me for another form of
Okay.
engagement. Is
Okay.
so the whole idea of the boutique model is really more based on repeat and referral business, right? And so it's really a matter of, once you have your foot in the door, how do you keep staying queued up, right? So what's really nice about a lot of my startup clients, though, is that they do have phasing, right? So we look at where they need the most bang for my buck. But the other thing with my 4-month offer that I do is that I'm actually training your staff. So it's not just you're getting this kick-ass product at the end of the 4 months. You've also learned by process of how to do it. So you can replicate what we've done with another team on another project. And that's intentional. Like, that's how I get to be generative, right? Is that it's like Vidal Sassoon. I tell 2 friends and they tell 2 friends, and so on and so on and so on, right? Is that I want to teach people how to do innovation the way that I do it so that they can be innovative. And you can see that in my LinkedIn reviews, like in terms of people that I've mentored over the years. They've literally, like, this model that I came up with is literally what I've been doing professionally, right? It's what Oracle would hire me to do. It's what Sun Microsystems would hire me to do. It's what Visa hired me to do. It's basically upskill our people. And the way that I was going to be able to do this as one person was by taking leads, people who wanted to change in their careers. They wanted to develop in this area. And so I teach them how to lead the project and just give them enough shadowing and mentoring, and then eventually fade out and then just do sit-ins and check-ins. So I might be one person working with 5 leads. Each of those 5 leads has their own team. I'm teaching the leads, and then with their team at the beginning as well, until they're at a place where they can lead the team. And then everybody in their team gets the experience. Like, you can see that how that would spider web out, right? That's how I do it.
So next one, I start where you have a 182% ROI. Like how does that number come up, and how can you prove that to people?
That's hard. That comes up right at the beginning, and finding out what it is, the problem that you want to solve, and how you're going to measure it. And that's one of the first things that I tackle with clients, is that very thing. What's the thing that you want to measure? Is it customer satisfaction? Okay, as measured by what? Is it a change for me, because I'm a behavioral scientist? Change in behavior. What kind of behavior? Increase, decrease, steady state. What does it look like? And so when you know what you're dealing with, you have a baseline, and then you have, after your implementation, right? After your intervention, pretty easy to do the math on it.
So our customers are not good customers, right? How do you get rid of your bad customers? You just like fire them, so to speak, or you like try to train them to be a better customer, or you just like get rid of them?
So I'm really good at selecting out. So I don't take everybody who wants to work with me. So I try to do that. I try to be preemptive. So I'm never finding myself in a position where I'm so desperate for a client that I just take on someone for the money. I won't do that, because it never works out. It actually will do you more harm than good. So I got out my bad clients when I worked for other companies. So I've had a lot of experience with that, and I just I don't even entertain it anymore.
Okay, I have this written down. I have no idea what it means, right? But I wrote, for some reason, I wrote unlocking creativity, video games, and the new creative. Does that ring a bell?
Say it again.
Unlocking creativity, video games, and the new creative,
Unlocking video games,
and the new creative.
and the new creative.
Let me put in the maybe I'll find it from the YouTube.
Sounds like actually one of my friend's businesses. It's what he actually does, is he's trying to teach people how to be creators and how to use media to do it.
Oh no, okay, it was some kind of event. This right here. Could you
Oh,
speak?
that, yeah. So that's the VRARA. That's or VARA.
Okay,
Varara. Okay,
okay. So
so
you speaking that, aren't you?
I am going to be attending
Attending,
that.
okay, yeah.
Yeah. So the VRARA is a professional organization that focuses on virtual reality, extended reality, and augmented reality. So Roberto is the chapter president of the Seattle chapter, and then Julia Beabout. She and I have had a couple of conversations already about collaborating on a few things. She does mostly AR work. So this particular one is going to be a presentation that the local chapter does. That's just a networking opportunity. So I am going to be at that one live
Okay.
because Julia has asked me to come a few times. Um, I've done some really cool AR work, like just in that nobody does,
Mm.
like I did this really cool project for DHL, the delivery company. And so Julie was like, you got to present that. You got to show that to people. And then the other thing I was thinking about doing for this, but I don't know if I want to yet. But one of the last things I built for the last company I'd worked for before I started doing my own gig, I built VR, AR business cards. So basically, you have a business card that has a QR code on it. You scan the QR code, and then your Jason avatar or Jason video comes up and it starts talking in your voice and it makes some kind of speech and some kind of call to action, right? The way that we set it up is a template, right? So it basically mimics you. And at the call to action, it's going to behave like you would if somebody did or did not follow your instruction,
Mm.
right? So mine was particularly hilarious because I have things that I do with my face and I get a little impatient and I tap my foot. So if the call to action was like, go visit my LinkedIn page or whatever, if you haven't done it, I will chastise you for not doing it. Right. So I wanted to actually recreate another one of those to show them because they hadn't heard of doing such things before. I'm like, well, if you're going to do a business card, you might as well have something like,
Yeah.
everybody's got a phone, right? Scan the QR code and make it do something cool. So I was actually going to play around with Godot and see if I could recreate that in Godot and just as a way for me to give me something to work on a project to apply it to. But I used like I think Eightfold. I think I might have was what I originally created in. I can't remember, but
So what's your take on the current status of the AR, VR, AI, ML community here in Seattle? Is it ahead of schedule where it needs to be, or they need a lot of help? What's your take on that?
um, what I see in general is a lot of people who are interested in the technology and the hardware and that aspect of it, but they haven't really put a lot of thought, or they think they know because everybody thinks they know, into how people actually learn and what are the best learning use cases for the technology. Like some of them are no brainers. Like obviously, the very first stuff that I started doing in VR was military, right? I was working for the National Guard. It was where I was working during 9/11, and I was creating for MOSs, some of their, like I remember doing board training. It was super cool. And everyone's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I want people to have the experience what it's like to look through a board, actually see it. And they're just like, that is whoa, because what I noticed is that especially for the National Guard is they never had the actual equipment. How freaking dangerous is that? Is that they aren't full time. They don't actually have the right equipment to train on, and then you're going to put them into battle when you need it. Make that make sense. So for me, like the military uses, they've always been ahead when it came to extended reality. Definitely medical is up there as well. But teachers want to use it, but they don't realize the potential for it to actually be more harmful than helpful. So I'll give you a couple of examples. So everybody loves the Meta Quest headset because it's inexpensive and it's, you got the metaverse, it's already established, pretty easy to create environments in there. And there's lots of companies that are creating environments in there. So teachers are using this in the class, barely up to speed themselves. Meanwhile, kids in their class have been using these kind of headsets forever, been playing games forever. They know how to escape the classroom and go off and do something else in the metaverse. Well, the teachers think they've got them captive attention when they don't. They're all fucking around somewhere else, right? So they thought that, letting kids pass notes in classrooms or just leave the classroom was a problem. It's like you've given them a whole world to go explore in a metaverse. Like Roblox, all Minecraft, all of these like gaming environments. There's so many predators out there. It's like, my God, if you don't understand how to safeguard the kids that are in your care and you're trying to use metaverse for that, that's a problem. So that's one that's really problematic is that people who are trying to lead the charge and be the instructors aren't as skilled in it as the people using the kids, their audience. The other is the data leakage, right? Like people don't think about like when you're in a headset and you can see where it's setting a parameter around what's your recordable space, but all the other things in your environment that are being data collected on that you didn't consent to, that all of a sudden is feeding into Facebook and Facebook being what it is, and it's a major, major data collection platform. For me, I think a lot of us need to be a little more concerned about the status quo of why we allow these large tech companies to own our data, like why we allow ourselves to be harvested and why that's okay and why we aren't challenging and making laws around that, because that to me is what's could prevent a lot of problematic behavior. And I think it's people like to talk about UBI. That's a way that we could actually get to UBI in a way that makes sense. If we're going to be creating data, then we should own the data that we create from all the different devices that we have, or choose to opt out and really opt out. Like they don't get to just use us like that. That's the kind of thing that I think about, is that we should be able to own our own data. We should be able to create our own software, our own apps to use our data the way that we want. So say I want to lose weight, right? I want to have an app that isn't going to be fed into the cloud somewhere that someone can then market me a bunch of weight loss shit that I would never buy anyway. But I want to be able to record the things that are meaningful that would help me lose weight. And I want the app to be able to track that just for me, just for my own purposes. Maybe if I want to share that with my doctor. So when my doctor tells me, it's like, oh, no, I'm not going to give you this menopause drug because blah, blah, blah. You just change your exercise. No, look, I've done it. See, here's the data. That's what I think. That's the world that I want to live in. I want to live in a world where people are very savvy to all the different ways that data are being collected on us. I want us to be able to take control of our own data and be able to say, yeah, I do actually want to have things that are marketed towards me, and give consent that is legit for this purpose, not in the fine print. You have to dig down and, cookies default to fucking you over and all of that, right? Like, it's like, that's the stuff that I really want to make impact around. So I think that people who are more activist oriented or are more interested in politics or the law, get involved in data from that perspective. You don't have to be in tech to be able to be data aware like that and to be able to make a difference, right?
I don't know how true this is, but I remember reading somewhere that Meta sold everyone's data to Netflix like $100 million or something like that.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised at all. I wouldn't be surprised if they're all not all data swapping all amongst each other. I mean, all of these platforms are data collection
Mhm.
platforms. They're all these large, what we used to call them behavioral psychology token economies. The difference is that we're not the rats pressing the levers and getting the pellets. They get the pellets. That's not fair. That's not fair at all. Like we literally are living in a Black Mirror world and it sucks.
But what is your take on UBI?
Tell me a little more. Say a little more.
Like, UBI, I think like a lot of people against it because, we want people getting money for nothing, But my thing is like, we'll take truckers, right? If you make all these truckers unemployed because you have the anonymous truck vehicles, right? Do you really want $250,000 like instantly unemployed, making no money, right? And then like, how do you figure out that UBI is like based on your location, based on what you did before? Like example, like I don't like I've seen like robots on TV on internet like cleaning closets, picking fruits or whatever. So like, suppose you have a truck driver. I make this all up. Truck driver, we'll say making 100,000 a year, right? We'll say you have a janitor making like 50,000 a year. Does the UBI then get based on what they did before? Is it equal for everyone? Like
That's what I think is going to be the hardest sell with UBI, is that people who are making more than whatever who gets to establish what the rate is and under what circumstances, right? And how many side hustles do you need to work? Well, because that's kind of where we are right now, right? How many side hustles do we need to work just so that we can live the kind of lives that we want to be able to live, right? So who gets to decide that? Like, I think it's funny. If I apply to a job as a learning and development person, I can make between maybe 100 and 150K. But if I do exactly the same thing that I do, but I come with a machine learning engineer, now all of a sudden I'm making 100K at least more than that because of the cachet of the words, and that to me isn't right. It's just like BF Skinner wrote Walden 2, I want to say in the 1940s, that was looking at actually compensating the people who had the shittiest jobs the most. So if it was a job that really no one wanted to do, they're the ones who get the most money for it. It's just like what we were learning about what are essential workers, right?
yeah,
And it turns out essential workers are some of the more poorly compensated
yeah.
people, even though they're essential. So I there's a lot to unravel with UBI, but I also think we need to think about how it is that we're generating data, we're generating money for other companies unknowingly. Like it's not an accident that tech companies are as wealthy, and why like Nvidia is all of a sudden like way up on the stock market, like people don't know. Like that's the thing. Like this is allowed to happen because people are kind of in the dark about why it's happening. It's just like, well, I should work. Like the thing that pops up for them is like, I should get a job in tech. I should transition into tech because then I'll make a lot of money. And literally, that was what my professor told me about since I came out here to do my internship. That's how I came to Seattle. I came out here for a year in 1994, right? Going to be here for 1 year, do my doctoral internship and then go back to West Virginia, defend, move back to Canada. That's not obviously what happened because I'm still here. But one of the people on my advisory committee had just said that. He'd said, Lindy, you're brilliant. You absolutely could become a full professor at any university that has a strong behavior analysis program. Not a problem. We could help you do that. However, you're already in Seattle. Why don't you go work for Microsoft? Why don't you go work in tech? It's going to be because he's living in West Virginia, knowing that Seattle is going to be this tech hub in the 90s. He already knew it, right? Before even the .bomb era happened. He already knew it. So he says, he goes, you can do research working in tech. He goes, you deserve to make more money. Grew up poor. You're far too smart to come and work for $35K a year. Don't do it.
Do you think most people, like most average Americans, realize how advanced tech is going to be?
I don't think people realize how advanced tech is already.
I agree with you. Yeah.
And also how not advanced it is. Like literally was watching some dude hawking some generative AI that was clearly just semantic analysis. That's all it was. Pretty easy classification. It's machine learning. It's barely AI. But because he was talking to it and it had a voice, he's all like, look, it's empathetic AI. It's a therapist. It's AI therapy. I'm all like, dude, that is phenomenal. Like how you are like deceiving people. Like that's so not okay. And plus, like, it's some tech bro, right? Like he doesn't know. He's obviously so out of touch with human behavior that it's like, yeah, your dog can tell by the tone of voice whether or not you're mad. It doesn't mean he understands the words you're saying,
Do you think UBIs are going to be inevitable? Do you think it's actually going to come sooner than later?
I think it has a lot to do with how politics go. I mean, I wouldn't have predicted, COVID and shutting down the world, like having, and then people being convinced to take vaccine, like all of it. Like it just feels like such a science fiction movie the last 5 years.
Doesn't it though?
Yeah. Like it's so it's like making the hard prediction about like, are we ever going to become a world economy as opposed to like a bunch of separate nations? Like that's the other question, right? I mean, there's a lot of hard things to figure out around data. And it is like, we were just talking about this, me and like my previous client, we're talking about that being the arms race is over data. That's the latest arms race.
And so you have 6 clients right now, right?
More than 6.
More than 6. So I thought you said your limit was 6.
At one time. Yeah. So I've got people who are on a waiting list and I've got people who have finished up who want to come back. But yeah, 6 is the most that I can work with simultaneously. So I try to stagger.
Okay. Can you talk about like some of the things they're doing, like that excites you,
So I've talked a little bit about the dream analysis app. That's one that's super cool and super exciting. The GPT group that I work with, that's Chat Black GPT. That's Aaron Reddick's here in Seattle. Excited about that because it's culturally diverse GPT, which we need because we've already seen with a lot of large language models and a lot of AI in general is that there's bias. Dr. Joy's book, Unmasking AI, is a really good example of that. Her Netflix show, Coded Bias, even more so. So that's another group that I'm really excited about working with. The client that I was meeting with today is doing child DBT, which is therapy, a type of therapy, child therapy. The particular person that she's working with is Ukrainian, and she's actually offering this therapy for children of the Ukraine, right? So she's got over 200 Ukrainian therapists already enrolled in the program, and it's basically helping with the trauma of, going through war, as kids growing up in a war-torn country. Yeah. So that's another one that I think is like none of my clients are doing trivial, superficial things. Like they're all
big moonshot stuff, right?
Important stuff that the world needs, right? Another one that I'm just working with now, we haven't quite signed because she needs her money, is Quiver. And Quiver is femtech. It's based on female pleasure. So it kind of competes with, oh my God, yes, but way more than that. Another group that I'm super excited about is MoveSpot. They're based out of Atlanta. They are young dudes in their early 20s that have figured out a brilliant tech that's only available on Apple. I can't wait for it to be available on Android so I can start messing with it. Like I've been just playing with it through my emulator, which is not really the same experience. But what they've created is a way to get people off of social media and get to being able to meet in person. So that whole idea of the kids who came up as teenagers through the COVID era, who don't have the socialization skills, who missed out on that. They weren't the ones who went to the mall to meet kids and hang out. That's what their app solves for. So they a social media platform that is not meant to be sticky and to keep you on social media, but to pull you into the real world. Super cool. But so those are the kinds of things. Another one that I'm working with is a scaled mental health platform. And so they're basically creating a platform that allows you not only for researchers and therapists to not only test their efficacy of doing therapy in a digital format, but then once they've actually tested it and made sure that it works, then they're doing flipping it over and then offering it as something that has data behind it that it actually works, and then can do that therapy through the platform as well. So both research and application.
So when you decide what startup to work with, is it more based on the founder themselves? Your belief in the founder can make it happen? Is it more based on the idea?
The idea for sure, because that's usually where I start from is people having a vision or an idea and then me helping them take that idea and making it real because my big thing is don't talk about it, be about it. So I show them how to prototype, I show them how to get it done. A lot of people come to me with something already, partially baked. So a group that I just finished working with, they were when I started with them, practice AI, and that was one of the things like branding. That's not what you want to call it. So now they're Jaffe AI. Um, they just finished their beta, and that's another conversational engine for you to practice hard conversations before you actually have to have them in person. So you're using this large language model to practice having difficult conversations with, and it's very sympathetic and very supportive. So it's not going to, cuss you out if you say the wrong things, but it will correct you, and it allows you to, do it in a safe environment, right? So that one's going to be a huge hit. I know they needed to get it ready because there's a big conference, ATD conference down in New Orleans that's coming up at the end of this month. They needed to have their beta test done. So I helped them just by doing some specific kind of consulting. Here's some things you need to look at. So I know that they're working that out after they do their ATD presentation. I'm sure they'll have more that they want me to do with them. So, and that was Joe reaching out to me. A lot of times it's just people reaching out to me because they know someone who's worked with me in the past, they've worked with me in the past, or I've just said something in some medium that connected with them. And then they talk to me and they're like, "I really like that. I want to learn more." And then there's lots of people who just want to collaborate with me. And I'll do that too. Like I will do collaborations with people because if it can help and I have the time, happy to do it.
So two-part question. From your point of view, what are like some characteristics or values of successful founders and then the ones of like unsuccessful founders?
I think the biggest differentiator is that openness to ideas that are different from yours. And so being open and then being able to pivot. So when you get feedback that, being able to set aside your ego, let the data drive you, and then also how customer or learner or end user focused they are. Because if they're only about their own objectives, they're going to miss the mark of the user base. Like those folks who like one of my current pet peeves lately with tech and the software that goes with it is that people are now like crowdsourcing their UX testing. They're putting out their product and they're making people pay for something that's half baked so that they'll get feedback on it and, they're making money off of that versus when I came up and how I still do work is I do the UX testing iteratively. So as we're developing prototypes, as we're developing iterations, we're doing that user testing, but it's not mass because you don't need to. You don't need like when you crowdsource like that, you're actually muddying up your data. So you can't tell like I was even saying this to Patrick with one of the Dream Amigo people. Like he was basically using LinkedIn to do some crowdsourcing about whether he should add this feature into his app. And one of the guys who responded, I'm like, Patrick, now you're going to have to figure out who made that comment and funnel that out because he's never going to be somebody who's going to use your app in the first place anyway. So I'm not a fan of that whole, oh, crowdsource and find out, like, no, the whole break thing, move fast and break things is stupid, because then who are you breaking? Like, there's always someone who's going to be hurt by that along the line, and it's not you, so you don't give a fuck. And I'm just like, that's not okay, like that's really not okay. So for me, it's move a little slower
Mhm.
and plan accordingly and test, like work iteratively and test, like test with smaller groups of people. You can do that. You should do that.
Can you talk about some of the incubators that you're involved with, like you said earlier?
So Pioneer Square Labs, AI2, and then of course, Y Incubator down in Silicon. Another group up in Vancouver that I haven't met with yet, but I'm gonna because you know, Canadian, gotta, gotta get some of that kind of representation. And then I was recently working with some folks out of Denver as well. That's where the latest Denver demo days that's where I found Quiver and I found MoveSpot actually.
Nice. Um, so what's your future plan for yourself? Do you like be known as a startup learning person? You want take over the world, or you want to be the number one person who does this stuff, or you just want to keep the more boutique thing, like you said earlier?
So one of the things I get asked a lot is about, and even when I was in like secondary school, is about running for office and politics because speak persuasively and I'm good at convincing people of things. But I've always been of the opinion that that's the person who should be the campaign manager, not the candidate. So I am all about making other people look good and helping other people. If along the way we build products that are patentable, then heck yeah, my name should be on the patent because I missed at least 5 patent opportunities where it was my idea and my name's not on those patents. And meanwhile, Larry Ellison owns how many islands in Hawaii now? And does he really need more? Um, so I'm not ruling out that I won't build something cool myself and that I won't pursue products. So there's lots of things that I've done prior to, because I'm 55. I've done a lot of things already. And some things I've shelved that I might bring back if I have the right partner to work on with them. Because that's what I think a lot of those things are. I don't think they were bad ideas. I think they were the wrong partner or the wrong timing. Because a lot of times I'm ahead of my time, right? Like a lot of people are. So right now, where I am in my life right now is really about helping other people maximize their potential. And we'll see where it goes.
You ever see yourself quote unquote retiring? Or you plan
I am retired right now.
yeah, I don't or do you see yourself doing stuff until the end, so to speak?
Well, we never know how much time we're gonna have.
Mm.
So that's the other thing too. I would like to be in a position where I make enough money that I can start to fund the people that need the funding. Because I know more people who need money that have great ideas that need that. That's what they need the most is the money. It's not that they need my assistance. They've got the brilliance. They've got all the other things. That's what they need. So if that's the role that I can play, so be it. And that's what I want to be able to do. My whole thing is about turning tech upside down because I've had enough experiences with tech bros, and I know it's not really working for most of us.
So you say earlier a spiritual person. What does that mean to be a spiritual person? Does it mean you meditate every day? You talk to trees every day? You talk to you talk to your elk every day? What does it mean to be spiritual?
Um,
And why is that important to you to be a spiritual person?
That is, I think, deep in my DNA. I think that that's the people, the tribes that I come from, the people that came before me. It's just my way to honor, it sounds cliche, but it's honoring my ancestors. And that's what I'm doing. Like I'm giving back by showing appreciation for those who came before me. And and again, I think it's a big thing when your parents die, right? When my mom died, I started to take on the characteristics that I really feel I got from her and really leaned into those. When my father died, same thing. And so that's as the older I get, that's more of what I rely on is just leaning into the things that were already me and finding out what that means. And for me, it really was, so much of my life is about nature and growing and being in touch with other beings, and quite honestly, I mean, I'm one of those people that dogs come up to, like wild animals don't mess with me, I can grow pretty much anything. So there's something to be said about that. Like even my brothers say that. They're like, "You're the one who got the green thumb in the family." I'm like, "I'm the one who paid attention to it, and I'm the one who continues to pay attention to it." I think where you put your attention is where things change in your life. And I put a lot of attention there because it's important because I spend a lot of time in fake shit, right? Like in the synthetic world. So I like to remember what's real. Like I said, like how much of it is real, like that's memory that really happened, and how much is just some bullshit my brain made up? Like I just like to make sure that I can tell the difference because, yeah, people said I'm a little bit crazy. And I was like, am I though? Maybe I just see things that you don't see.
So you've been involved with Seattle tech startups for a little bit, right?
Mhm.
So from your point of view, what are some pros and cons of the Seattle tech startup scene?
I think there's a lot of focus on the hard tech. There's a lot of focus on the hardware. There's a lot of focus on aerosmith. There's a lot of focus on defense. I think we need to think more broadly about who we're funding and why. And I think we need to think about people having expertise beyond just their technical expertise and matching those folks up with people. Like it's for me, there's so many people who have good ideas and don't have the technical acumen that we could really service better by just giving them the tech resources, like making that introduction. That's where I'd really like to see the focus. I'd really like to see the focus on femtech. I'm a woman, right? I want to see more women founders funded because we're not. I mean, 97.1% of funding goes to men. Come on, you can't tell me that they're the only ones with good ideas. Um, and then a lot of women's ideas are you have to fight so much harder, and women don't want to have to fight. And I think that's the other thing too. Is like, why does everything have to be about hustle? Like, why can't we live a softer life and still be productive? One of my favorite people, and I want her to be a client, and I'm holding space for her, has this brilliant project called The Great Exhale. And it's all about creating a softer space for a community of women who have been traditionally marginalized. And she's got a great response to it. And she doesn't know how to make it better because everybody's telling her how awesome it is. Because when you're used to getting scraps, man, those scraps taste tasty. And I'm like, why are you not having like the cordon bleu though? So let me in there. Let me take a look at what's really going on and let's see if we can really wow these women. We don't want them just to be, satisfied because they're getting something. How can we really revolutionize so that they can maximize their lives?
I know stats always show, like the more diverse a founding team is, the more likely they're gonna be like successful. Like female founders, like solo, like startups like three female founders always are more successful right in the long run. But yet still the money, like you said, like 99,000% to men, right? Like you would think a VC would be smart. Oh shit, the stats show I should invest in females. But I mean it's like it has been there. So I got involved with tech startups like probably 2015, 2016. And it's always been like that. It doesn't get better, right? It's like you think these VC are just stuck in their ways. And like it's like this seems like simple math, like, okay, the stats show investor diverse teams, you're gonna be more successful, but like it's not happening for some reason.
There are some VCs and angels who are onto that tip, which I'm grateful for, and those are the ones that I'm pointing to where the really big profit margins are. I'm like, "Yeah, but look at her. I know what you see here is an alternate pornography site, but what I see here is a different approach to doing content moderation that Meta and Nextdoor and TikTok really should be doing." And she has the data to demonstrate that we should force them to do it. So because of the harm that they're causing by not doing it, um, I need to make that message as amplified as possible. And so the Cindy Gallups of the world, I want them to be the ones who get the money because they've been doing. I mean, Cindy's not new. She's been doing what she's been doing for 15 years. She's done the TED Talks. She's a freaking icon. She's worked for some of the and raised money, significant money for other companies most of her career. She's educated from Oxford. I mean, this is the thing that I say too. It's like, what more do we need to do to prove that we know what the F we're doing? Like any bro could walk in with less than half of those credentials and just have some confidence. And we're throwing 12 mil at them. You know what Cindy could do with 12 mil? I mean, so it's got to go beyond just those like those unicorn VCs and angels who have done the math and have done the crunching and can see why it makes sense to invest, not just in women. I mean, women is one demographic that's traditionally underfunded, but so are people of color. I mean, was this a brilliant translation program I saw, like just the number of people who are Spanish speakers living in the United States who can't function in their daily lives because people don't speak Spanish, and their translator is basically gives them that service at a pinpoint with a human translator to be able to have a conversation that can mean the difference between them staying in a country or being deported, that kind of a thing.
I'm gonna show you this real fast.
Yeah.
So the thing was like, think about how men and women think differently, right? And so this is a hula hoop challenge, men versus women. See how the men are doing it. Kind of difficult, right? I think that you had to hold hands with everyone, right?
Yeah,
You
and
can't
just
bring
tap it
contact.
down. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why are they doing it like that?
Just
Okay, I have an idea of how I would do it differently already, but
no, no. Here come the woman. Every one of these men are gonna should be like, I must have the dumbest person ever. Not doing what a woman did.
that's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah. Actually, I would have done it through the feet, but that's even better.
Yeah. And so it's like, it's just yeah.
How long did it take them? Almost half, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. And then back like Black founders that be funded. So recently I saw where like I make this up like 2022 Black founders, the Bay Area got like $10 billion, and that went down from 10 billion like maybe like 100 million, right? Like insane decrease, you know.
Well, one of the things that I heard recently too is that a group of Black female VCs were getting, if somewhere in one of the southern states, I can't remember which one, were getting sued for discrimination because they were only funding other Black women.
Yeah.
And I'm like, come on, you know how infrequently Black women are funded anyway? Like,
Yeah.
seriously?
With that one, I'll push back what they should have done, because that is illegal, right? What they should
Yeah.
have done, they should have said, we prefer to fund Black females, you know. What they were doing, understand, like they weren't taking any application for anyone else, right? They only like funding Black females. So that's against the law, right? So they should have said, and not saying the right thing to do, but they should have done was like, hey, we prefer to found like Black female founders, and then just like took applications and just like rejected it, right? Like I'm not saying I'm not saying that's what we should have done, you know, but the fact they said we only found,
I got to
you know,
finish that. Just
yeah, yeah. So talk about your own company, all right? We haven't talked about it enough. So talk about how your company got started, what you focus on now, what your big term vision is for it is.
So I left Oracle in 2019, and mainly because I wanted to, help other people. Like that was mainly what I wanted to do. And I probably should have started Linda B Learning then, but I didn't. And as it turned out, like COVID and all these other things we couldn't predict had happened since then. But most recently, I'd been working for a learning technology company that was based out of Canada. That was one of the draws. Like I was literally December 2022, bought the domain for Linda B Learning, was going to go full on, do that work then. And then I got some executive headhunting company wanted me to take this position with this Canadian learning tech company. And I was, they were dangling the carrot of the role that I've been trying to pursue since I was 27 years old, and that's chief learning officer. I got close when I was at Sun. I was one of 4 chief learning architects. And so the next job up from that is chief learning officer. So that was the carrot that I'd been chasing forever. And they dangled that carrot. And that's what I found out, that I can come up with innovative ideas, and clients want to work with me and work with that company because of the innovative ideas I come up with. And as long as I'm empowered to work with the dev team to actually build the thing out, then we build the cool thing and the client's blown away. It's awesome. But if all I'm doing, and I was sitting on the sales team for this company, if all I'm doing is pitching the client and the idea of it, and then we just hand it over to the dev teams, and then the dev teams take it and I'm no longer involved, they'd go through their usual processes. They'd build something that was not hitting the target, and the customer would be pissed. And so 6 months went by working for this company. I hadn't been appointed into the CLO role yet, and I didn't see what I was getting out of that. I was seeing that they were getting more from me and profiting more from me, and I wasn't even able to help that many people. I'd work with shitty clients that I didn't like, that didn't value me. And so I thought, no, I'm just going to do my own thing, because I've demonstrated to myself, I think this is the final demonstration that I needed, that the reason we're successful is because we're doing this do it with you model that I'm proposing. So the only thing I need to be able to do is find clients, and clients find me. So that's how it came to be. And it's just a matter of building really cool things. Like that to me is really fun. Like I really like creativity. I really like innovation, and I really like living my own life. Like I like having the freedom to work when I want, with who I want, as much as I want, where I want. I don't want someone telling me, I got to have my ass in the seat at this office for this many hours. No, go away. Like, no, I don't want that. I'm not interested in that. So I'm doing this as long as I need to do it. As long as there's people who need support doing the kind, like, if, I've always been that little bit of a rah-rah cheerleader that's like, you can do it. Like when I was teaching group exercise classes, when I was doing athletic conditioning work as well. It's just convincing people what they're really capable of by doing it with them and demonstrating to them, Like you were talking about people who don't have the confidence, because it's not a matter of just competence. It's a matter of confidence too. Like there's people who are like overly confident and they suck, right? Like, so that's an imbalance and that's a problem. And then you also have the people who are actually quite capable, but they don't know it because they've been beaten down or they've been lied to. And somebody telling, I think about my poor nephew, it took him 5 times to get his driver's license because every time he kept failing it, he got less and less confident in his abilities and he got more and more paranoid. And I'm like, Grayson, that's actually more dangerous for you to be freaking out like that. I go, you just got to chill and relax and do the thing. I said, you're letting this guy who's just one guy, and yes, he happens to be the one who has the power to pass or fail you, but you're letting him get in your head, because and I said, just drive with me for a little bit. Let's go drive on the lawnmower for a little bit. Go cruise around in the field. Show me you know how to parallel park. If you can parallel park my lawn tractor, you can parallel park my car next. And if you can parallel park my car, you're going to pass your driver's test. So confidence and competence, like they're measure both when you're doing learning, like do both, like tap into how confident are you feeling that's the right answer, Jason? Are you sure? Are you sure? And then you'd be like, oh no, I don't know, man. I don't know. So,
And what's your vision for your company moving forward?
um, I, I want to see, if there is a possibility to scale it. Like, cause people know that I do all the AI stuff and they're like, they know I can build
Like,
digital
think about maybe
twins.
doing like a franchise model or something like that, or
Let's see, I'm so anti-franchise though. Like that's like the opposite of boutique, right? Like it loses its specialty then. And
or
that's,
maybe something like the John Maxwell leadership model, where you have all these like learning people underneath you.
yeah, I,
You got to figure it out.
I just, I'm not sure that scaling this business is the way to go. I want to teach people the skills. If there's a way for me to do that on a broader scale that makes sense, like far transfer training, then that's how I talk about it. Like there's near transfer training, which is just very procedural, right? Like how you make a latte for Starbucks. It's like always step one, step two, step three. With the kind of work that we do with innovation and creativity and design, it's not that. That's far transfer. So you having someone who's there to guide you and to help you apply the steps that applies to your specific situation is such a game changer compared to here's a bunch of best practices and guidelines. Okay, go figure it out. Figure out how it applies to you. And then there's nothing. There's no guidance, right? There's no feedback. And then how's anyone going to know if they've actually done it correctly, right? Or done it in a way that's beneficial? Like, because even correctly, right? Like, is there a correct answer? Like a lot of times it's not going to be a correct answer. It's going to be an iteration. And it's especially when you're creating something that has never been done before, because there's new to you and then there's new to like everybody, right? And those are two different types of novelty.
Do you ever do like any public speaking anywhere on learning?
I used to
Okay,
early in my career, and I do a lot of podcasts now
okay.
because people ask, and I'm happy to talk to people. But what I found by going to conferences, I mean, literally when I was like 31 and I'm go to this conference and they had this divine design competition and there's like myself and one of my colleagues that I was working with at the time. We're a team of 2 people. And then the other 6 people who are selected to compete are like teams of like 6 and 7, like everybody, their designer and their producer and blah, blah, blah. And it's just me and my buddy Betsy, right? We're like, okay. We ended up winning that competition. And that same year, I also won the Macromedia Innovative E-Learning Award, which of course Macromedia got bought by Adobe. And then Adobe built this tool that was called Captivate, and Captivate and Storyline are the 2 most pervasively used rapid e-learning tools out there. What we did with our prototype, with our winning IP for the Macromedia Innovative E-Learning Award, is we actually gave Captivate and Articulate the piece of their technology that they didn't have that made their technology game changing, and that was branching. They never had branching. That was literally something I did as an undergrad at UVic when I was like in the 80s. I developed it in a language lab that just, it's like choose your own adventure, right? It was basically a way you could script that in HTML. And so we basically used Dreamweaver, Macromedia's tool, with this customized HTML to create these branching scenarios for car salesmen. It was for Audi of America that we won that for. And so for me to be able to, and then I published some paper like on 7 drivers of performance in a major trade journal. Anyway, if I'm doing that at 31 and everybody wants to talk to me when I'm 31, I'm all like, what the fuck am I supposed to learn from you then? Right? It's just like, and it doesn't even matter. Like at that point, I was thinking that, nobody really cares about what we do because they're all like fawning over us while we're here. But then we go back to work and they want us to do like this garbage stuff, or like in that particular organization that I was working for where I did all of those things, less than 6 months later than that, instead of promoting me, they hired some dude who got so intimidated by me that he decided that he was gonna hire a team of people to replace me. And the people that he was hiring, like one of the guys, the only reason he took that job is because he really wanted to work with me and learn from me. And he was the dude who was quite a bit older than me too at the time. And so I didn't know I was interviewing people to replace me. Like I didn't know I was interviewing a team that was going to replace
That's kind
me.
of fucked up.
But kind of, right? And it just really hurt my heart a lot because that particular gig, the guy who was my manager was like the best manager I'd ever worked with up in my career till that point. He ended up moving out of state, and this is before, we had really virtual learning or virtual teams like we do now. But I mean, I should have been promoted into his role when he moved away, but no, they hire some dude instead to do it. And I never really forgave my boss's boss for that, you know? And then he ends up putting me in this situation where it's like you can be put on a PIP or you can find your happiness elsewhere. I'm like, dude, really? Like, I won this, I did this, and you want to put me on a PIP? And I'm all like, he goes, well, and I need you to make your decision, like today. And I'm like, can I at least call my husband? And he's like, no, because he's a car salesman, right? And he doesn't want you to have to make a decision, right? You don't really need to check in with him, right? This is your decision to make. And so I'm like, okay, well, you're leaving me no alternative. See ya. Because he thought I would just cave. He just thought I would take the PIP and call it good. And I walked. And I decided to start my own company then. That's when I was doing athletic conditioning. I was working. That's when I went back to school, worked on, got my second master's degree. But I was doing that because I was just over it. I'm just like, this is some bullshit. This is sexism. Like, this is what I'd heard about tech. It doesn't matter how smart you are, how good you are, how many awards you win, what you do. If you're this and you're 31 and they're not, they're going to just think, like we can just manipulate you and push you around. And I was also a competitive boxer at that era of my life. So I don't know what you were thinking, dude, because I'm not a person who I never laid down and I almost always won by knockout. So
Yeah, I tell people all the time, if someone gives you a PIP, they 95% of the time they've made the decision to get rid of you anyway, right?
well, why wouldn't you walk
Yeah,
under those
yeah.
circumstances?
They set up a fail.
Well, the thing that happened is that whole department collapsed after I was gone because I literally was carrying it. And I knew it. I knew it. I was building out a team because I wanted to scale what we were doing. And they thought they were going to replace me because well, the thing was too, like I said, dude who was supposed to replace me as the lead, he walked too. He's all like, only joined because I wanted to work with Linda. If she's not going to work with you, I'm not joining. See you.
Yeah,
Bye.
exactly. So next one, what would it take? What would it take for this to happen? Right? Suppose when your founders you're working with, they say, "Hey, Linda, I know you have your own company, you're doing the consulting stuff, but like, we want you to work full time. We want to stop your company working full time. Whatever you want, you can have. Right? Money, position, title. We want you with us 100% of the time, and stop doing consulting. Like, what would it take for that to happen for you? Like, what would it take for someone to convince you to stop your company and like just work for like this random tech company full time?
I literally just did that last year. So I know the answer. That's the hard no.
No, okay.
Yeah.
So there's nothing anyone could offer you money, position, title, equity, like you work remotely, whatever you want to do, just be with us full time. Or no?
No.
Okay. Okay. Easy
It's a
answer.
one-word answer.
No. Okay. Nice. Okay. Um, is there anything else that I asked you that I didn't, or anything else you want to talk about?
How can I help you, Jason?
We'll talk about this after the podcast. Like
Okay.
that's the one thing I got to build out. Like everyone's good. Like, hey, how can I help you? I think most people kind of suck at when they get that question, right? Most
Yeah.
people are like, how can I help you? Or most people suck at like, how can you help me? Right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's not getting better at. I suck at that. And I suck at follow up. So yeah,
Oh no.
yeah,
2 things that help you build your business, bro.
yeah. I know. I know. Okay. Yeah. Anything else you want to talk about?
Um, I don't know. Anything else cool happening in Seattle that we should probably touch on or
I
anything
mean,
local?
there's always networking stuff going on. There's always something cool. Like here in Pioneer Square, like I told you, they're doing is like the Cinco de Mayo margarita taco crawl from like 12 to 7. That's pretty cool.
Mm,
Um, last Thursday, I went to so the first Thursday in Pioneer Square, they have a thing called an art walk where all the galleries will open up for free, like
that's
5 to 10.
awesome. I've done it a couple times at Sam. Yeah.
Yeah, so I did that this Thursday. That's pretty cool. I got to see a lot of Salvador Dali paintings.
Nice. I have a Salvador Dali.
Yeah, that's pretty nice. Yeah, there's always stuff going on in Seattle, right?
Yeah.
Of course, like tell people if you got to network, but like don't network too much because like you do. There's something going on every week or every day, right? Some
Yeah.
either AI, ML founders, startup hall. A friend of mine, Navita, she does like a monthly. It's gonna happen. So the building the Pioneer Square Labs is in. So Pioneer Square Labs is third or fourth floor.
Yep.
Underneath is like the uncommon incubator.
Yep.
So she's doing a pitch competition there on May 15th, like early stage startups.
Yep.
We did the first one in April. We're doing over May 15th.
I've got a client actually that's going to be doing the one on May 15th. So
Okay.
yeah,
Nice.
that's one of the ones that I pitched to her as well. I'm like, 'cause, again, needed money, right?
Yeah.
I was going to say, so Cinco de Mayo, margaritas,
Yeah.
rhubarb burritos. They're so good. I mean, it really is. And I'm also about, anything you put a circle of salt around for someone who's a little bit witchy, we're
Yeah.
very good about that, right? It's all like, yeah, I'm all about it. That's my little protection. So margaritas with salt around them, sure.
So are you gonna be there too on May 15th?
Um,
Hopefully you can come.
I think so. I think
Okay.
so. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got to see where Amber is with that one, but I told her I would be her boots on the ground in Seattle.
Yeah.
She's in Denver, so
Okay.
yeah.
So how it works is like we did the first one in April. So 3 people pitch, right?
Mhm.
You get 10 minutes to pitch. You can do less, right? And so you do your pitch, and everyone has a paddle, and the paddle goes yes or no, right?
Yep.
And then then they take questions, right?
I recorded Amber's pitch that she did for demo days.
Okay.
And so that's Access Mode was the name of that incubator in Denver. And
Okay.
it was supported by the governor. Super, super cool. That's actually how I ended up getting Amber as a client, is
Okay.
that I was watching her over Zoom do her pitch and I recorded it. And I'm just like, this woman's awesome.
Yeah.
And so I'd sent her, I reached out to her and I said, yeah, I actually recorded it. And she's like, you did? Because she hadn't gotten the recording
Yeah.
from Access Mode yet. And so she's all like, of course, she's critiquing herself and only saw the mistakes. I literally saw no mistakes. Like,
Yeah.
I just was like blown away with how, like, given the nature of what she's talking about, like, there's a lot of opportunity to become uncomfortable,
Yeah.
especially in a mixed audience. But she just delivered. And so we've had a couple of really, really good conversations thus far, but she needs money. And so that's what that's my first priority with
So
her.
speaking of money, I think the Seattle VC startups or angel investors get a lot of criticism, not actually like doing funny, right?
Yeah.
And like I can count off the top of my head like 10 founders who didn't get money here, but went to the Bay Area, New York City, somewhere's got money, right?
Yeah.
Do you advise your clients when it comes to fundraising, hey, like focus on Seattle only, or do you sell, hey,
No.
like
Go where the money
go
is.
like
Yeah.
travel, like spend a couple weeks in the Bay Area, go different places, and of course, with COVID came kind of different. You can do stuff in Zoom, but is it better like okay,
Be there.
like go like like
Pump the flesh. It makes a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've got a couple that I'm sending to New York because of that so where I try to do is try to match people. It's a little like being matchmaker, right? Like, what's the vibe? What's the chemistry? Who's actually doing and what are they actually funding in the different areas? Everybody's interested in Y Incubator, but again, Y Incubator is another one that's primarily it's going to fund the bros, right? But everybody hears about it. It's like, yeah, but Uber, and I'm like, you're not Uber, man.
Yeah.
So yes, and I also encourage people to do their homework and to find. It's so much easier to find things than it has been in the past, like that, and especially within your own communities. Like the number of people that I connect, like Brandeis Marshall, good example of that, right? She funded and started her own association, Black Women in Data. Like that's all her. She's in her third season, her third time of doing her conference. And it blows me away how many women work in data science, Black women who work in data science who hadn't heard of her. So me making that connection. So Brandeis and I meet once a month and we just talk about whatever shit we're doing. Like she literally just came back from recording LinkedIn Live Learning, right? Like she's done some of that work. But there's something else. We're probably going to end up doing like a data scraping workshop together. I just kind of feel that one in my bones a little bit. Only because people always ask me about how I do it. And I mean, if you want to learn Python, I can show you, but for the most part, people don't want to learn that. And you don't need to use, and that's what I do because I don't like feeding IP into the great unknown black box that is a lot of these AIs, but there certainly are other tools that you can actually use to do semantic analysis that are no code and doing the type of data scraping, like literally the tools themselves. Like if you want to data scrape a channel from Slack will tell you how to do that. And quite honestly too, if you don't know how, your favorite GPT, right? Just type in there, how do I learn how to data scrape, blah, blah, blah. And it'll tell you, it'll literally give you a plan.
Yeah.
So you walk through the steps of that plan. And then where it deviates, you do like what any developer does. It's like you start to do your homework from that decision point, right? So, I just like to empower people and just let them know what they're actually capable of and put them, like things you think of that it's really more a matter of you just didn't think of it. And so if you want to if you want to have an alternative perspective or have someone to bounce an idea of who's going to think of something that you haven't, I am your girl for that. Like I was the kid in class, like, here's a paperclip. MacGyver this. What can you do with it? And I'm like, kept coming up with ideas. 5 minutes later, it's like, I'm not done. I'm not done, you know? So I just have one of those brains that thinks about different ways of doing things. And I absolutely encourage people to talk to me about that. Like, I give that shit away. I don't care. Because
So
it's not like I have the one good idea and that's it.
does your brain ever shut down, or are you having ideas up to the time you sleep?
Well, I dream, right? I dream all the time. Yeah.
No, people don't realize that. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Like, your brain actually doesn't shut off when you sleep, right? Your brain is still operating when you
Yeah.
sleep.
Your brain's got it's there's a reason that you sleep. There's a reason that you dream. It's just most people are oblivious to those reasons.
So how do you do this? Suppose you have a founder and like stuff's not going well for them. Like, how do you convince them, hey, you're a great person, you have a great idea, but maybe you need a pivot. Maybe you need to do something different.
And it's a matter of having a conversation with them and understanding, what is it they're trying to accomplish and what have they tried so far and why do they think that that hasn't worked? Like just those three simple questions can generally help tap into why they should pivot and how they should pivot. And that's it. I mean, three questions.
If someone like has no idea of AI, ML, any VR, no idea at all, what's like a networking event they should go to kind of get like a dummies 101 on all this stuff?
I'm a big fan of self-study. So, I mean, if you're going to go to an event, Black AI think tank.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. They do meet once a month. Stefan Youngblood. I've learned so much from that particular gathering. It's usually anywhere between 40 and 150 or 160 people have been on those lives. Unbelievable what you learn about because collectively there's so much goodness in there. And if you just listen, like that's the thing too. It's like just listening. Um, but absolutely, like just keep on top of it. Ask if you're gonna have these Gen AI bots out there, ask them questions. What do you suggest technology? You're the all wise and knowing Oz. What do you think? You know?
Linda, can you share your social media with us so people can reach out to you?
Yeah. So my website is Linda B Learning. So I'm always being because I be learning all the time, right? So lindablearning.com is my website. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. Also Linda B Learning on LinkedIn. My personal on there is of course my name, Linda Berberich. And yeah, you can find me. I come up the beginning of the search ranks. Usually my website first, my personal profile second. So pretty easy to find as long as you can spell that wicked last name.
So, Linda, you talked about all the great stuff already, but can you give us any last minute wisdom or advice or anything you want to talk about?
Yeah, I don't be scared of technology. That's the biggest thing is that people fear it. And fear to me, like maybe I'm a black cat, I don't know. But fear to me is always an opportunity to look at why you're scared. It's an opportunity to dive deeper. It's an opportunity for inquiry. Like that's how I usually describe it. So if it scares you, that's your emotions telling you, pay attention, learn.
Linda, thanks for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
And to our listeners, thank you for your time as well. Remember to be great every day.